I am going to return to the people from whence I came.
Hello, I'm Peter Mandelson, and I'm proud to serve as His Majesty's British Ambassador to the United States of America.
I feel a tremendous sense, a profound sense of sympathy for those people, those women who suffered as a result of his behaviour and his illegal criminal activities. And secondly, I regret very, very deeply indeed carrying on that association with him for far longer than I should have done.
The Ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
Mandy's out 4 decades and 3 scandals, or 3 that we know about. Guess what? Number 10 knew all about it. They knew that he lived in Jeffrey Epstein's flat.
Mandelson resigned from the Labour Party late last night over the allegations of $75,000 set of payments to him from Epstein while he was business secretary, $10,000 to his now husband, a photo of him in his pants. This isn't just bad form. There are strong arguments here for him to be facing investigation over misconduct in public office.
I knew of his association with Epstein, but had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him.
Breaking news that Lord Mandelson, Peter Mandelson, has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt. This is the establishment, the British establishment on trial. Came to us around about 5 o'clock when we learned that we saw footage of Peter Mandelson being led out of his London home in very exclusive Regent's Park by 3 coppers.
Now we have all these allegations, we have all the documentation related to those allegations, which Downing Street is being forced to put out. The first tranche of it will be early next month.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
To Talk Breakfast, and breaking this morning, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah al-Khamenei is dead following targeted airstrikes on Tehran by the United States and Israel. But why didn't Britain help, with the Prime Minister Keir Starmer refusing the United States permission to use British air bases? And what next for this authoritarian regime? Is there hope now for the people of Iran that they can live in freedom? Will the Revolutionary Guard who maintain this regime stand down? Could we see the collapse of this entire administration? A totalitarian religious rule that's been in position since 1979. And with Iran's efforts to build nuclear weapons thwarted, is the world now a safer place? And will history judge Donald Trump for this bold and decisive action? Well, here on Talk Breakfast, we're going to bring you reaction from military figures, politicians and journalists from around the world and across the political spectrum. But with Donald Trump in the White House and with this decisive action in relation to Iran, is the world now a provably safer place? It's all about your opinions. My number is 0344 4991000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222, or leave us a voice note. And as the saying goes, let's talk. So much to get through. Get your reaction in, please, because it's all about getting your opinions on the national radio and television airwaves. You can hear us on DAB+, in-app and online, and you can watch our output. 4 hours of coverage of what's happening in the Middle East. See it all on YouTube. Just head over to YouTube, search Talk, and up we pop. And we start with the front pages. The Sunday Times, Israel. Ayatollah is no longer after Iran blitz. The Iranian regime launched strikes across the Middle East yesterday in retaliation for a major military assault from the United States and Israel. Missile strikes were launched against Tehran, Iran's capital, and many other cities across the country yesterday morning after talks over its nuclear program faltered. Iran retaliated, hitting countries including Qatar, Bahrain, the UAE, Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, as well as Israel. Although at this stage, it looks like Iran's efforts at retaliation have been somewhat impotent. This has been decisive on the part of the US and Israel, who have taken out the leader of the world's most dangerous regime, a regime that were working on enriching uranium and building nuclear weapons. This is a regime that just in recent months has switched off access to the internet whilst people are protesting in the streets. We've got reports of upwards of 40,000 people murdered as a result of their protests. Well, could this be the beginning of the end for the regime? The leader has gone. So it's all now about the Revolutionary Guard, who maintain law and order in that country, maintain control of this theocracy. Will they stand down? Will they surrender? This is a very fast-moving situation. We're going to get the views of military figures and people in the Middle East in the course of today's programme. By the way, good day to bury bad news. That's never going to happen on my watch. You know, when you have a global news story like Iran having airstrikes from the United States and Israel, that is the perfect day for this government to hide what they're up to, their incompetence and their dishonesty. Not on my watch. Let me report to you on the national radio and television airwaves that Josh Simons, the Cabinet Office Minister engulfed in the Labour Together scandal, has resigned. Simons was cleared by Sir Laurie Magnus, the independent advisor to the Prime Minister on ministerial standards, of breaching the ministerial code. However, Magnus said there was a risk of distraction and potential reputational damage if he remained in government. Well, let's be very clear that Labour Together is Keir Starmer's favourite think tank. It is the think tank that helped him become leader of the Labour Party and Prime Minister. It is the think tank that was set up and run by his former Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. Labour Together has got Starmer's DNA, his fingerprints all over it. And Labour Together is a think tank that went after journalists who were having the temerity to look at the funding of this think tank, and they cast aspersions on lots of brilliant journalists, including several at the Sunday Times. So we won't bury that bad news. More shame for this Labour administration. Also, row as PM fails to let America use British air bases. This is the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. America and Israel have struck Iran. Where was Britain? Where were we? Why did we not support our number one economic, diplomatic and military ally? Sir Keir Starmer yesterday backed President Trump's attempts to force a regime change in Iran, but faced questions over why his government had refused to allow the United States access to its military facilities in the region. I'll tell you why. Left-wing Labour MPs who are running this country. Starmer's not running the United Kingdom. This is getting serious now. We've got a Prime Minister that tries to introduce modest reforms to disability benefits around 5 billion, right? Small change, doesn't even touch the sides. His backbenchers, his radical lefty backbenchers, would not even allow him that. He's in hock to the left of his party in order to survive. And it's quite clear that he has refused the use of UK air bases for the United States in order to placate his left-wing MPs, who in a very perverse way are rather supportive of this Iranian regime. Because it was the left, of course, that every weekend were on the streets with their so-called peace marches, which the former editor of the Jewish Chronicle told me on this programme was a, and I quote, festival of Jew hate. So they protested about Israel's self-defence after October the 7th. No protests about the Iranian regime murdering 40,000 of their own people for going on the streets and protesting. Not a squeak out of the left. And it's quite perverse that the deputy leader of the Green Party was at a pro-Iran protest just yesterday. These people are sick. Observer, killing of the Ayatollah, Supreme Leader Khamenei's body found, say Israel. Trump calls on the Iranian people to overthrow the regime. What are the left going to do now? They must be so confused because they hate Donald Trump. But what he looks to have done is thwarted the efforts of the world's most dangerous regime to have nuclear weapons. So it's very difficult to sustain the idea that Donald Trump is the bad orange man when he effectively disarms the terror-supporting Iranian regime, a regime that murders its own people and switches off the internet if they dare to protest. Deafening silence from the left this morning. They're going to be very, very confused as they wake up to this news that Donald Trump has effectively saved the blinking world. That's what he's done. Old Donald Trump, the bad orange man, strikes again. And do you know something? I've got dog's abuse for speaking up for this guy, who's improved the terms by which America trades with the world, who has closed the southern border where they had illegal immigration, 12 million people in 4 years, many of them crooks and murderers and drug dealers and terrorists. This is a guy that's scrapped net zero. America's got cheap energy. They've got the cheapest gas since 2010. Did you know that? That's leadership. The bad orange man strikes again. Multiple peace deals in the world, including Gaza. But he's bad, apparently. Look, he says a lot of stupid things. He's an idiot at times. He's not a very trustworthy person. I don't think he's very honest. But I judge people by their actions, not the words. And now surely this move in Iran, if this regime falls, does that not make Donald Trump one of the great presidents of history? Where is that Nobel Peace Prize when you need it? Front page of the Sunday Express. War erupts across Middle East. The world held its breath as hundreds were killed when the United States and Israel carried out a series of devastating airstrikes across Iran, with chaos erupting across the Middle East as Tehran retaliated. Their retaliation has been pathetic. It's been absolutely pathetic. They've struck various sites. They've blown up a few buildings. We don't know of any fatalities yet. It's been impotent. And I believe, and I'm no expert on this, but my impression from, having been up half the night immersed in this is I suspect that this regime is crumbling. And it won't be thanks to Keir Starmer, who, as I'm going to be pointing out in today's Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m, is consistently on the wrong side of every argument. It's amazing, isn't it? If that guy was on Deal or No Deal, he would always pick the empty box. Can I be honest with you, folks? I've never seen Deal or No Deal. Engineer Dave, have you watched Deal or No Deal? Yeah, he has. Dave's a fan. He enjoys his daytime telly. And Dave, if you get it wrong, is the box empty or is it got what happens? There's always something in the box, but there's a level of money. So Deal or No Deal, folks, at 6:15 in the morning. You either have the thousands in the box or you've got a quid. Would that be it? Yeah, well, 1p. Well, if Starmer played Deal or No Deal, he would pick the box that says 1p every time. This is a guy, he's the broken clock, Dean Spencer, who had a big night last night, I can't lie, of all the nights to go out. Dean Spencer The guy is a broken clock that's not even right twice a day. And by the way, he did not go out. This was a high-level meeting with a member of the mid-morning team. And that's why can I say that's why we're winning on breakfast? Because of the leadership I get from Dean and my amazing team. By the way, directing our TV output today is Davis. And lovely Tommy is taking your calls. Is the world a safer place now? Is it time to thank Donald Trump? And is it time for the left to say sorry? Should the left apologise for everything they've said about Donald Trump, who has, in my view, made the world a better place? By the way, the tariffs, I think they were great. I think it's a disgrace that the Supreme Court have reversed that decision. They're thwarting the will of a president who said he would do the tariffs. Sun on Sunday, war on Iran. Tehran blitzed by Trump. Khamenei's palace hit. President, he was killed. Ayatollah dead is the headline. Donald Trump wearing his white USA hat, looking very, very focused. Looking quite serene and humble. No bragging at this stage from Donald Trump. Just a quiet focus. Resolute, I would say. This is what leadership looks like. Do you think that we would have had this targeted strike on Iran and the unseating of the wicked leader of a regime that kills its own people? Would we have had that under Little Miss Wine O'Clock, your drunk auntie, Kamala Harris? Good luck with that. Little Miss Cabernet Sauvignon? I don't think so. Or what about sleepy Joe Biden, who needed reminding on a regular basis that he was the president of the United States? Daily Star. Brits Dubai missile terror. I tell you something, it brings it home to you, doesn't it? A hotel, 5-star hotel in Dubai is bombed, and it makes you realise that when it comes to the Middle East, nowhere is safe. Yes, it's a very westernised place with lots of people flocking there for their holidays. Entrepreneurs live there now. I think we all might have to go to Dubai at some point because this country is going down the toilet. And I think Dubai might be an option for many. Would they have us? Well, you know what they do? They've got an immigration policy. They'll only take you if you're productive. There are no benefits. You have to get a job. You have to have a couple of quid in the bank. They're not stupid. Anyhow, let's have a look at the headline. Blasts rock tourist hotspot as Iran strikes back at US blitz. Brits ran for their lives as Iranian missiles targeting holiday hotspot Dubai hit top tourist hotels. The carnage came hours after peace-loving Donald Trump and Israel launched a massive attack on Iran. What are they saying? Who is the ridiculous woke lefty that wrote this piece for the Daily Star? The carnage came hours after peace-loving Donald Trump and Israel launched a massive attack on Iran. He is peace-loving. He's trying to stop Iran from having nuclear weapons. I think it's a really good idea if a regime that kills its own people for protesting doesn't have nuclear weapons. Call me old-fashioned! It's 6:18. An amazing guest live in the studio next. One of the country's most well-connected broadcasters and public relations expert. This guy knows everyone at the top of politics, royalty, showbiz and beyond. Don't go anywhere.
The Green Party have won the Denton and Gorton by-election. Labour in third place.
Breaking news that Peter Mandelson has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt.
What would Andrew Loney tell them to do?
To come clean, be honest. And if Charles is complicit in this cover-up, which I believe he is, then I think he has to fall on his sword.
When you define sex, what you gender or sex, what you mean is biological sex, and that's a man or woman, what you are physically, not what you think you are on a Wednesday afternoon.
A across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk Breakfast 6:20 and breaking news front page of the Mail on Sunday. British tourists blitzed and Iran's leader dead as Middle East erupts. Let's get reaction now from broadcaster and one of the best connected public relations figures in the country, Piers Pottinger. Good morning, Piers.
Morning, Mark.
Do we wake up to a safer world?
Well,
I thought I'd start with an easy one.
Yes, that's an easy one.
Have you had your tea?
I would hope so. I think anything that removes the barbarous regime and the murderous regime in Iran is positive. However, the job has to be finished. And this is what sometimes Trump isn't as good as he should be sometimes in following the whole thing through properly. Doing the bombing raids was one thing. It appears that the Ayatollah, the leader of this terrible regime, has been killed. And it does appear that the people of Iran are on the streets rejoicing and the regime is beginning to topple. But we've got to make sure it is finished. Trump has done some very clever things here. He's promised amnesty to the Republican Guard, the Iranian military.
And he's pretty much told them, stand down or we'll take you out.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what leadership looks like, isn't it?
It is. I mean, what I find the most despicable response was that of the laughable Emily Thornberry, the so-called head of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the House of Parliament, the former Labour shadow Foreign Secretary.
A woman that sneers at working class British patriots, of course, don't forget.
Yes.
She posted a photograph of somebody with an England flag outside their house like that was crime of the century.
And guess what she talked about? International law.
Brilliant.
I mean, this government of ours is obsessed with international law. They hide behind it at every opportunity.
International law is against the British national interest often.
Yes, and in some cases, what international laws are we talking about, and who is making those laws?
And are those the international laws ignored by many administrations around the world?
Of course. There is an international arrest warrant out from one organisation for both Netanyahu and Putin, yet Netanyahu goes to the White House, and there we saw Putin only recently being feted by Modi in India. So they mean absolutely nothing. And of course, the court that supposedly told us we'd had to hand back the Chagos, the person who was in charge of that court was a member of the Chinese Communist Party. Please, I mean, let's get real. And for Emily Thornberry to make such a crass statement at probably the most significant moment of Trump's presidency, and something that the whole world has to watch very carefully, because already, of course, there have been repercussions in Dubai, in the UAE, in Bahrain. The Iranians have done what they always do, is lash out against Westerners or areas where Westerners are based. So the soft and easy targets they're hitting, as these, of course, are cowards and bullies who are perpetrating these awful events. And I mean, for someone like Thornberry to make those sort of statements, it is shocking. The other thing is that Starmer must be very relieved this is happening in many ways, because under the cover of this, one of his ministers, a cabinet minister no less, cabinet office minister, resigned yesterday after trying to smear in the most horrific way a whole lot of outstanding journalists on the Sunday Times. On top of that, we now have another Labour peer who's had to have his whip removed because of his gross misconduct allegations. Now, he was only appointed a peer in January this year, so he's had 2 months. We also have another Labour peer, this is all on the same day, who has said she won't take her seat because she admitted she lied about having a PhD, which she doesn't have. And she's in education, by the way. At the same time as all of this, as if this wasn't enough, we have an MP sitting as a Labour MP still, who has been convicted of corruption in her home country, Bangladesh, convicted and sentenced to 2 years in prison and a fine, and she is still a Labour MP. Starmer has no spine, no judgment, and is surely not fit to be our British Prime Minister.
Well, I'm very concerned about the current situation, particularly this diplomatic row that is brewing. And you've got a front page story here, Sunday Times, row as PM fails to let America use British air bases.
Yeah.
Now, why has that happened? Is that pressure from left-wing backbench MPs, do you think?
Yes, almost certainly. And, you know, Starmer is being controlled by basically non-British people at the moment, people who dislike our country and dislike everything we stand for. And I mean, the most recent by-election wasn't actually a by-election about anything to do with Manchester or Great Britain. It was about Gaza.
Yeah.
Purely about Gaza. And I mean, why on earth are we having by-elections in this country about Gaza?
And the deputy leader of the Green Party was at a pro-Iran protest in central London yesterday.
Well, there we are. I mean, the Greens, of course, are completely lunatic and have no chance of government, thank goodness. Because at the end of the day, even the Muslims they cajoled into voting for them in the by-election have woken up to their policies and realised what a terrible mistake they've made already.
Most definitely. So look, so much to get through. Is the world a safer place following these US and Israeli airstrikes on Iran? What is your reaction to this? And where was Britain? Should we have allowed Donald Trump to use UK air bases to support this military action? I mean, what I can't understand is how Starmer doesn't see that thwarting Iran's efforts to have nuclear weapons is not a laudable goal, and why he wouldn't be foursquare behind the US and Israel in doing what they've done. This is not the Iraq War 2.0.
No, no.
The weapons of mass destruction were non-existent. That was fake news, cooked up partly by Alistair Campbell and the Blair regime.
Absolutely.
What we have here is clear proof that a regime wants to have nuclear weapons, and if they do, then global security will forever be compromised.
But also, it's toppling a regime that the majority of Iranians, ordinary decent Iranians, of which there are millions, they want to see the regime go.
Minimum 80%.
And yeah, absolutely.
According to my research.
But in any case, the US is still our most important and powerful ally, and we must support them fully. And this is another example of the spineless Starmer who at every turn makes the wrong decision and then either does a U-turn or doesn't. For example, on Friday, Rachel Reeves and her wonderful treasury told Leonardo, which is a company that makes helicopters in Yeovil, that they weren't going to have their contract. Then, after an enormous backlash later on in Friday, she said they could. And I mean, this is the chaos we are suffering from this government. They have no confidence in their own ability, partly because they have no ability. But the real problem we've got is in a situation as internationally the most important thing happening in the world at the moment, and Starmer doesn't back the voice of reason. It is crazy.
Speaking of voice and reason, Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, has blasted the Prime Minister for his refusal to support American airstrikes in Iran. We've got the inside story. That's next.
smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:31, you're listening to Talk Breakfast. Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, a man that the polls tip to be our next Prime Minister, well, after Angela Rayner and Ed Miliband. Nigel has been on X and he's posted the following. The Prime Minister needs to change his mind on the use of our military bases and back the Americans in this vital fight against Iran. What are the implications, Piers Pottinger, for the special relationship in the context of Starmer's refusal to help?
I don't know, but I
don't think the Americans will forget.
No, I don't think so, and I think Trump will be, if indeed it's true that he wanted to use our bases and we didn't allow him, I think he will not forget that or forgive it. And I think it is insanity. Whilst we've got to be careful, there's no reason we can't offer proper support. And we should actually have unequivocal support on a situation and issue like this, because it's got nothing to do with international law, whatever that might be. It's actually what it's got to do with is basic civilized rights of a country, and also to stop a hostile country causing mayhem around the world, which is what the Iranian regime does. The problem is it's now got weak, and it's a weak bully, and a weak bully is very dangerous because Hamas and Hezbollah have basically been destroyed or very, very severely damaged. The Yemeni Houthis are about the only Iranian proxy group still really active and pretty much untouched, undamaged. So Iran, which was using Hamas and Hezbollah and funding them to cause all this trouble in the Middle East and beyond, around the world, with all the terrorist attacks, now is wounded. Now the Ayatollah is dead. It's very wounded, and so it's lashing out. And it's a very, very dangerous situation. And that's why I said it's very important for Trump to see this through. And we should be backing him, as Nigel Farage says, 100%.
Well, it's an amazing political own goal, because any nation that participated in the unseating of the Ayatollah and the thwarting of Iran from having nuclear weapons will be judged very favourably in history. And the Prime Minister, I'm afraid, will not fall down into that category, in my view. Has Donald Trump made the world a safer place? It is 6:34. This is Ivor in Hampshire. Good morning, Ivor.
Hello, Mark. You okay?
I'm very well indeed. And we would normally be talking on this show, Ivor, as you know, about inflation, the cost of living, unemployment's on the rise. In my view, a rather shady and corrupt government who are quietly burying bad news this morning. But we need to talk about Iran. Why do you think this story matters to all of us, Ivor?
Well, I mean, Trump's done a good thing. I mean, this is for the benefit of all of the West. You know, this Starmer, Piers has more or less said what I was going to say. He's just a useless, good-for-nothing, spineless piece of, well, I can't say it.
Well, Ivor, I know. I mean, I'd hate to censor you because you sound like you're firing on all cylinders this morning.
Well, I'm livid to think that, this is what we've got running our country.
And why are you livid, Ivor? Why are you angry?
Well, because we should be doing all we can to help. And this article is almost like he's pro-Iranian or pro-terrorist.
Why do you think he's done this, Ivor?
I just don't know. Whether it's because he's after all the support from the Muslims that he can get, possibly, or he's just totally a traitor.
Well, you can't rule anything out, can you, Ivor? Stay with me. This is a Prime Minister. Stay with us, Ivor. There's a Prime Minister, Piers Pottinger, that mysteriously forgot to wear a poppy when recording a video for British Muslims in the run-up to Remembrance Weekend, except he'd had the poppy on for the rest of that day. So I'm not sure about the motivations of our PM, to be quite honest with you.
No, I'm not, or any of this government. I believe they're basically anti-British because they're systematically damaging every institution, every tradition. They've gone for the countryside.
Jury trials, free speech.
Yes, and they're unnecessarily banning trail hunting, making a big issue of that, which is going to cause great economic damage in the countryside. And once they've damaged the countryside, they're going to cover it entirely in solar wind farms or solar battery stations. I mean, this government doesn't like this country. And it's let in so many immigrants. They're now beholden to the immigrants in many constituencies. If you look at the most recent by-election, it was all down to the Muslim vote. It had nothing, and none of the issues were British.
No.
This country is being taken over by very much the wrong kind of people.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, and whilst we're throwing shade on people, let me offer the Conservatives 14 years of effective open borders, and especially the Boris wave. So if I'm going to give it, if I'm going to dish it out to Starmer, I'll dish it out to the Tories as well.
Definitely.
Absolutely. I mean, Theresa May signed up for suicidal net zero, and Boris Johnson opened the floodgates to mass immigration. Truly unforgivable. But interesting talking to Ivor there. I'll come back to Ivor in just a second. Why have the left been so silent on Iran?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think it's...
Is it not because it's an Islamic regime and therefore to condemn them doesn't fit the narrative?
Well, I think it does feel like that, and I really didn't want to.
Because they're not too bad. They're not too bad at slamming the Israeli regime, are they?
No.
Or I could call it a democracy if you like.
Yeah. No, they are petrified about saying anything that can be seen as anti-Muslim, because the Muslims now, in so many Labour seats, actually control their majorities and whether or not they will remain as MPs. And so they're defending anything Islamic, and it is or certainly not criticising it. I mean, look at the way they're dealing with the grooming gangs inquiry. They are refusing to acknowledge the question of race and ethnicity.
And I took a call the other day and someone said you should be calling them Pakistani Muslim rape gangs.
Yes.
They shouldn't be called more generically grooming gangs. Call them what they are.
No. You're absolutely right, but that's not happening. And I mean, I really fear that, I mean, the Labour Party criticise Nigel Farage for being divisive when they themselves are causing this division by being so pro-Muslim rather than the great majority of the British people. They don't stand for what the British people want anymore. This government is completely out of touch with the majority of the country. That's why they didn't only lose their by-election, that they in a seat they've held for over 100 years. 100 years, that's been pure Labour, untouchable Labour seat. Not only did they not win it, they came third. They came third. I mean, it is unimaginable. If I had said this to you even 2 years ago, that this would happen in that constituency, I'd be laughed out of you know.
Well, I completely agree. Ivor, I don't know why the left are so quiet on the Iranian regime. It's truly wicked. Of course, we know that in recent months they've essentially switched off the internet so that the protesters are finding it difficult to communicate. We don't have any sort of free press or proper reporting, but a suggestion claims of 40,000 people murdered for protesting in the streets. And then there is the small matter of Mahsa Amini. Now, do you know that name?
Yes.
This is the amazing young woman who, well, it's a tragedy what happened. 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian woman murdered by the regime after being arrested by Iran's morality police in Tehran, the capital. 13th of September 2022, she was stopped and detained in Tehran by the morality police for allegedly not wearing her hijab properly
that's right.
under Iran's compulsory veiling rules. Shortly after being taken into custody, she collapsed and was taken to hospital in a coma, and 3 days later she died. Ivor.
Of course. I mean, sorry, what I must say is the real reason the left don't criticise Iran is because at the moment, hopefully not for much longer, the regime that runs the country is religious. These are religious leaders who are now political. What we would like to see is those religious leaders returning to religion and stop meddling in politics.
Well,
but
absolutely.
the problem is, because they are Islamic religious leaders, that is why the left don't dare criticise them for offending other members of the religion.
Most definitely. Well, listen, we're going to take more of your calls on this. Is the world a safer place following Donald Trump's airstrikes on Iran? Do you support this? And what do you make of Starmer, who did not offer UK air bases to the United States? The United States, our number one economic and military ally, a country that famously came to our rescue in the Second World War. More to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Graham in Stirling has messaged the show. Talk Breakfast 6:44. The leader of Iran is now dead following strikes by the United States and Israel on Tehran. Graham says, good morning, Mark and Piers. If Keir Starmer is desperate for a legacy, he may just have earned it in his desire to appease Muslim voters. His inaction in the removal of a despotic regime that has its tentacles across every terrorist organisation in the world will be remembered for a time to come. We've got Arnie in Sunderland. Good morning, Arnie. How are you? Thank you for listening to the show. Arnie says, why hasn't our terror alert been upgraded? Starmer must go. We need a real leader in place. Nigel Farage is that man. We'll get to more of your thoughts in just a moment. If you're joining us, front page of the Mail on Sunday, British tourists blitzed and Iran's leader dead as Middle East erupts. Sunday Times, Israel, Ayatollah is no longer after Iran blitz, and row as PM fails to let America use British air bases. Sunday Telegraph, Khamenei dead in rubble. Trump and Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, shown a picture of Ayatollah's body after compound struck. Massive attacks on Islamic Republic by US and Israel in push for regime change. Iran retaliates against Israel and hits 5 Gulf states, including a hotel in Dubai. How do we see this playing out, Piers?
Well, I hope that Trump is going to see this through, and I hope that the groundswell of what is happening from the people within Iran will topple the regime once and for all. But very quickly, and Trump has played a clever card here by declaring an amnesty for the guards, the Iranian Republican guards, which is a very clever thing, I think, to have done, and wants them to lay down their arms. Hopefully that happens. Then we need as a good interim government, preferably with non-religious leaders, so that we can start, the world can start seeing a calmer and more rational country in the face of Iran. The real problems now lie with the two key countries we haven't really heard much from, other than they've both condemned it, Russia and China. Now the real danger is, and there is some reasonable thought behind this, there is the real danger that China will use this opportunity while the world is focused on the Middle East. They might use this opportunity to invade Taiwan. The reason I don't think they will is because there's been a recent purge of generals in China by Xi, and with that he may not have the kind of strength at the top of his armed forces that he would need for a successful invasion of Taiwan. We know they're preparing for it, and we know that this is their objective. It's a declared public objective. The question is, will they use that to move now? The problem both China and Russia have is they were reliant on Iran for oil in many ways, and they were the big supporters of Iran, and to have that support cut off the other way, as it were, it's going to be very interesting to see what what China and Russia now do, if anything. But that is the danger. That's why we are in at the moment, as we speak at this time in the morning, a very dangerous point in the world at large.
Most definitely. What about this from Margaret in Norfolk? I heard that according to the law in Iran, the protesters they arrested who were sentenced to death are tortured before they are killed. Starmer made himself and Britain look scared and weak. Simon says, Mark, if we can't have Nigel Farage as PM, maybe Donald Trump could make us the 51st US state. Just a thought. Hashtag Starmer out. Has Donald Trump made the world a safer place? Howard is in Blackpool. Good morning, Howard.
Good morning to you and good morning to Mr. Pottinger.
Well, as you wake up, Howard, to this news, what are your first thoughts?
Well, the first thoughts are that it's a good move by Donald Trump to try and take out the regime. But I think granting amnesty to the IRGC people, of which are approximately 250,000, might be a mistake. It's akin to, at the end of the Second World War, giving amnesty to SS and Nazis. They're going to subsume themselves back into the Iranian population and then could regroup sometime down the line to start causing trouble.
Is it a price worth paying, Howard? I mean, these people, they can't all be incarcerated, can they? Is it a price worth paying to bring the regime down?
Well, I know they can't be incarcerated, but I think they're going to have to be taken out, killed as much as possible. We've got IRGC people in this country who've been creating all sorts of problems, and thankfully the security forces here have managed to thwart those problems.
I mean, some of them are effective terrorists, aren't they, Howard?
They are. That's the problem, and they're very clever terrorists, and that's what I'm saying. They can subsume themselves back into the population in Iran and then start creating problems for whoever is going to take over the country. So I think Donald Trump has to carry on with this, like Schwarzkopf should have been able to do back in '91 in Iraq, and go down the road to Baghdad. Somebody needs to go down the road all the way to into Iran and take out as many of these people as possible, because they will cause trouble down the line.
Well, Howard, notwithstanding whether the regime falls, many are arguing, Howard, that this won't be concluded satisfactorily without boots on the ground. What do you think?
Well, that's quite a possibility. That you say it may have to get into a bit of a protracted situation. obviously, if they can keep pummeling the IRGC with missiles, it might just force them into giving up. Because however loyal these people are, they're only as loyal as the person who they're being loyal to on any given day, possibly. So they're only ordinary people. A lot of them won't be the hardline fanatics. But in a country where it's like join the bad people or die, there's a lot of probably good people that are going to have second thoughts about where they go from here.
Well, Howard, stay with us. What do you think about that, Piers? Is it enough that these figures in the Revolutionary Guard are off the regime payroll? Does that neutralise the threat, or could they regroup, as Howard suggests?
Well, obviously there's that danger, but I think that what Trump is really talking about and focusing on are the foot soldiers, who, if you're cornered in a situation like this and there's no way out, then you react and you lash out, and the foot soldiers would have nothing to gain or lose. But if they've got nothing to lose, the danger is they will kill more people as they finally have to end up losing. As for boots on the ground, I don't know whose boots they would be, because the UN has made it clear it's against this.
Oh, the UN's been wringing its hands.
Been completely
How useless. What was the last war the UN stopped?
I can't remember. I'm sorry.
Their obfuscation is unforgivable.
It is.
And you've got the UN rapporteur accusing the US and Israel of destroying world peace following the Iran attack.
Yeah, it's absolutely outrageous. But if we had boots on the ground, again, it couldn't be British because we haven't got enough boots. As it stands, we're struggling. We've got a tiny army. And for Trump, it would be very difficult for him domestically, politically, to put American soldiers on the ground in a hostile situation for any length of time. It would be against his stated policy and make him very unpopular in the US, where his ratings, incidentally, are not good at the moment. So domestically, Trump has quite a lot of problems. That's why, in many ways, what he has done is extremely brave and should be absolutely applauded.
Well, I agree. I don't think there's too much to be gained from this other than making the world a safer place.
Exactly.
And that's a credit to this man who's often demonised by large quarters of the press. Howard, what do you make of Trump's position here, his actions, his motivations?
I think they're good intentions, and I think they are good actions, and I think Mr. Pottinger might just have swayed my idea of putting boots on the ground. So I appreciate it's all very easy sitting here in our lovely warm homes, isn't it? When you're not having to make these critical decisions. It also depends in some ways how the rest of the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia, reacts to this situation. They might be able to help in some way, not necessarily again with boots on the ground, but these people at the very top of the IRGC, as Mr. Pottinger says, the foot soldiers, they'll probably be happy to lay down their weapons. But it's this hardcore at the top, under the Ayatollah, who is only a figurehead at the end of the day, who follow him religiously, that need to be taken out, and hopefully the others will see sense and think, crikey, we can all live a far better life than what we've been living, committing all sorts of heinous crimes against the ordinary people of Iran.
And Howard, what do you make of the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, refusing to allow America to use UK air bases in these strikes against Iran?
Well, it's disgraceful, really. I just don't know. Can't get into his head as to what he's thinking. He's trying to keep a small number of people happy, whilst upsetting the majority of the population.
Is there a defence to be made for the Prime Minister that he didn't want this to be Iraq 2.0, Howard?
Well, by letting them use our air bases and everything, we're not recommending sending in troops and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there has to be a unified stance on this matter, whether it be Britain or Germany or anybody around the world. It's only going to be this similar type of country like Russia and China who will say this is a wrong thing to have been done. Any normal sort of law-abiding country will think, yes, you're going to get rid of the evil people, and the world as a whole, and especially in the Middle East, things might be better, because it'll be interesting to see if the regime does fall, what happens to the cash flow for Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis, how they're now going to, because who's going to support them financially? So, you're going to cut off their supply, and that might stop them from perpetrating crimes in the Middle East.
Howard, we just spoke to our caller earlier, Ivor, and I was citing the example of this young woman, Mahsa Amini, who was a 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian woman murdered by the so-called morality police of Iran for allegedly not wearing her hijab properly. Where were the left when that happened? Why have the political left, the progressives, the woke crowd, Howard, been so silent on Iran, which in the last few months has reportedly murdered 40,000 of its own people for protesting against the regime?
Well, this is the problem that we in this country need to be worried about. We've got a Labour government because people sat at home and were like children and said, we don't want to vote for anybody. And this is how we've ended up with this left-leaning Marxist government who is now Keir Starmer's now being pushed around by his own backbenchers and by these people out in various areas of the country who want to create their own little caliphate, and have done, within our towns and cities.
Howard, I tell you, you're not pulling your punches this morning. What a brilliant call. Will you call me again soon? I enjoyed your company thoroughly.
Nice talking to you both. Bye, Mr. Pottinger.
Goodbye.
You too.
Goodbye,
there you go. Howard, thank you for that brilliant input. And you get a Mr. Pottinger, by the way.
Thank you, Howard.
That is an upgrade. So what do you make of Howard's comments there?
Yeah, I thought they were extremely good, and it shows he's right on the ball. And I agree with just about everything he was saying. I mean, if you could imagine this country, instead of having an elected government, we had a Prime Minister who was the Archbishop of Canterbury, who was head of our church, because believe it or not, we still are a Christian country. Anyway, and so all the government was controlled by our church. And if you failed to go to church on Sunday, you could be executed. Imagine how absurd that would look and how outrageous it would be. And imagine the uproar about that. But in Iran, where you have their church at the head of it, their religious leaders, this is my point, where you have religious leaders in politics, it's extremely dangerous. And because they are fanatics, they are fundamentalist Islamics, and they are very dangerous people because, unfortunately, in their religious teachings, it tells them they have to destroy everyone who isn't members of their religion.
And the United Kingdom, whose #1 military and economic ally is the United States, was unwilling to come to the assistance of the US against an enemy in Iran whose mantra is death to America.
Yes, absolutely. It is. I mean, Starmer again just looks ridiculously weak. What's the point of having an agreement with the US to use our UK bases if when they need them most we tell them no?
Well, has Starmer torn up the special relationship? So much to come. Breaking news. This is Talk Breakfast. Don't go anywhere.
Fancy returning to the front line as Foreign Secretary?
I am going to return. I am going to return. To the people from whence I came.
Hello, I'm Peter Mandelson, and I'm proud to serve as His Majesty's British Ambassador to the United States of America.
I feel a tremendous sense, a profound sense of sympathy for those people, those women who suffered as a result of his behaviour and his illegal criminal activities. And secondly, I regret very, very deeply indeed carrying on that association with him for far longer than I should have done.
The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
Mandy's out 4 decades and 3 scandals, or 3 that we know about. Guess what? Number 10 knew all about it. They knew that he lived in Jeffrey Epstein's flat.
Mandelson resigned from the Labour Party late last night over the allegation of a $75,000 set of payments to him from Epstein while he was business secretary, $10,000 to his now husband, a photo of him in his pants. This isn't just bad form. There are strong arguments here for him to be facing investigation over misconduct in public office.
I knew of his association with Epstein, but had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him.
Breaking news that Lord Mandelson, Peter Mandelson, has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt. This is the establishment, the British establishment on trial. Came to us around about 5 o'clock when we learned that we saw footage of Peter Mandelson being led out of his London home in very exclusive Regent's Park by 3 coppers.
Now we have all these allegations, we have all the documentation related to those allegations, which Downing Street is being forced to put out. The first tranche of it will be early next month.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Three minutes past 7, I'm Mark Dolan. This is Talk Breakfast. And breaking this morning, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, is dead following targeted airstrikes on Tehran by the United States and Israel. But why didn't Britain help, with the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, refusing the United States permission to use British air bases? And what next for this regime? Will the Revolutionary Guard concede? Is there hope for a country that's been in the grip of totalitarian religious rule since 1979? And with Iran's efforts to build nuclear weapons now thwarted, is the world a safer place this morning? And will history judge Donald Trump for this bold and decisive action? We're going to bring you reaction from military figures, politicians and journalists from around the world and across the political spectrum. But what do you think? Are we waking up to a safer world? And why didn't Britain help? What's your verdict on Keir Starmer for refusing America access to US and UK air bases? My number is 0344 499 1000. You can text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note. You can hear the show on DAB+, in-app and online. Or you can watch our show, which is live, with pictures being beamed from around the world. Simply head to YouTube, search Talk, and up we pop. And as the saying goes, let's talk. And it's all about your feedback. I've got some brilliant guests coming up. But let's take a voice note. Let's kick off the hour. And this is Anna. Take it away, Anna.
Good morning, Mark. Anna, sorry. Never have I been so ashamed of a British Prime Minister as I was just now when I watched that blancmange in a suit trying to explain to us why we had not done the right thing by supporting our allies. He is a moral vacuum, Mark. And he needs to walk off that stage, walk out of number 10 with his head hung and never return. Thank you.
Anna, thank you for a brilliant first voice note of the day. We had a bit of trouble with the voice notes yesterday, but brilliant Dave and Dean are on it today. Here's Debbie.
Good morning, Mark. Debbie from Cornwall this morning. So my view is I'm so happy that America, the courageous President Trump has actually stepped in along with Israel to support the true Iranian people, the Persians. But isn't it so terrifying and alarming that our pathetic Prime Minister Keir Starmer has refused to allow them to use our bases? Like that gentleman said, a complete spineless man. Do you know what, Mark? I actually think this might be the end of Labour, because this is such a massive historical event. You know, absolutely humongous. And then we've got these idiots in charge, which actually on the world stage and even even nationally is terrifying that these muppets are running our country. I actually think that this could be the end of Labour. I really hope so. Please, dear God, please help us.
Well, that's what I'll always try to do, Debbie. What I will do is report your concerns, the issues facing the people of this country. Of course, on a normal day, we'd be talking about the cost of living, about the consequences of mass uncontrolled immigration. We'd be talking about the ridiculous suicidal policy of net zero. But of course, you'll understand today we're talking about global security, and Piers Possenger, this Prime Minister, has done precious little to help secure that.
Absolutely. He's a pygmy on the world stage. He likes to think, I mean, he'll fly abroad at any opportunity to go to any conference, summit, you name it.
He prefers Davos than Westminster.
He does, because he doesn't get questioned there. He just glad hands.
He's a preening globalist, isn't he?
He is. But he leads also a party that, on the one hand, boasts about doing something for women's rights and supporting women, yet they remain silent about Islamic regimes that treat women so cruelly and regard them as second-rate citizens. Fundamental Islam treats women almost like animals.
As we've seen from the Pakistani Muslim rape gangs.
Absolutely.
Well, let me tell you that another preening globalist is Steve N. Allen, broadcaster and political commentator. He joins us from his world studio. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning. Yep, that's on my business cards. I'll give you that.
Listen, mate, you're a hero, and we love having you on the show because you talk a lot of sense. How are you processing this morning? Piers Pottinger is worried because it's all well and good to use your military expertise to take out a target like the leader of this regime, but it's all about what happens next, isn't it?
It is about what happens next. That's why I don't think we're safer today. I think we're heading in the direction of being a safer world. Today, not so sure. We'll find out. And we can only cross fingers and hope things go in the right direction. I've seen a lot of conversations comparing this to Iraq back in the couple of decades ago. It's not the same because you didn't have this theocracy in place. So it feels like of all the random events that could be the next phase, more of them are going to be better. It feels like, yes, it's possible to end up in a worse situation, but it's just not, doesn't feel like statistically that's going to be the way, especially for the people of Iran, for the oppressed people. In the olden days, this wouldn't have taken such military force to overthrow a regime. If you had that many people not liking who was in charge, you would have had some sort of regime change from within, which would be the ideal version. But thanks to weaponry and ability to oppress people, that's not what they were facing. So in terms of ends justifying means, yes. Do you know what? America can have its arguments about what Trump should have gone through in terms of Congress or whatever before you start military action. Have your little chat. That's an internal issue for you. The world should be happy about the outcome of this so far, and then just cross our fingers that we head in a better direction. But I am feeling hopeful because I think all the directions, all of the outcomes, most of them feel like they're going to be better.
Now, progressives across the West were very concerned about what was happening in Gaza. And of course, the casualties were devastating and far too high in number. However, do you feel that the political left have been a little deafening in their silence in regard to Iran?
Yeah, and today, looking at some of the tweets, Zara Sultana saying I'd be happy if Pakistan gave Iran a nuke. Wow, I've got bruising from face palming myself so hard on that one. Wow,
that is a story. That is a story. So let's just repeat that. This is somebody that used to be a Labour MP who said she would like Pakistan to share their nuclear weapons with Iran.
Yep. And I thought today, I'd get a sense of what the take was going to be. So that surprised me. And sure, you can argue about the means, but surely you can't argue about the ends. But some people are so blind as to the actual impact on the people of Iran that you think, well, actually, no. Some people hate the West so much that they would willingly see Pakistan lend over a nuke so that we could be attacked. It is bizarre, isn't it? And that is the problem here. I think also, just to fold in the other story about Keir Starmer not letting our military force be used, it's part of the same story. I think this is almost Gordon and Denton stage 2. After getting that level of thrashing to the left of the party and knowing what some of the thoughts to the extreme left are, I think that's probably why Starmer just faltered at the fence. And hopefully he had some sort of pragmatism about the decision, thinking, well, it won't make a difference anyway. They will be successful anyway, maybe. But I don't know. I think this is nothing other than fearing the left of your own party to such an extent that you could have sat by and let the people of Iran continue to suffer. It's shocking.
Well, it is a bit shocking, isn't it? Starmer is a former human rights lawyer, Steve, and therefore he ought to have been concerned about the upwards of 40,000 people that were murdered by the regime for protesting. Of course, they've switched off the internet, so people were not able to communicate with each other. And I've not tired of repeating this shocking story, which happened in 2022, but tells you everything about the regime. And this was a 22-year-old young woman called Mahsa Amini, murdered by the morality police of Iran for not wearing her hijab properly. I mean, what's unfortunate for Starmer is that he can't share the spoils politically if this regime falls.
True, yeah, but I still think he fears the section who won't be thinking there are spoils in this outcome, because there are people who are, and again, maybe it's my biased take, but such self-haters or haters of the West that they actually are championing the idea of a theocracy, an oppressive theocracy, because they don't like the idea of things becoming more Western. So, and I think he's wrong about this.
And of course, your enemy's enemy is my friend, and of course, if you've got Iran, which wishes the destruction of Israel, well, that'll bring in a few nose ring wearing blue-haired wokies.
Yeah, but it's not the political cohort to appeal to. No good comes of that in the long run, because you'll never be pure enough.
Piers,
these Muslim states don't even like each other. Pakistan was bombing Afghanistan this week. Don't forget. And also, isn't it? I'm always fascinated by the fact that you don't see any Muslims seeking asylum in Muslim countries. I mean, it's absolutely, the whole thing is farcical in many ways. But what is particularly upsetting is the fact that the Labour MPs will not stand up and speak out against Muslim regimes. They won't do it. And because they're only terrified about their own constituency and their own power base. It's really dreadful, and it shows what appallingly shallow and self-centred people most Labour MPs are.
I mean, is there a defence to be made, Steve, on the part of the Prime Minister that actually what you've got here is strikes on Iran, no plan for what happens afterwards. Perhaps Starmer is mindful of history and the lesson of Iraq. Can that defence be made for the PM?
Not if it's going to happen anyway. Do you know what I mean? It's not as if Keir Starmer saying no then stopped all action. I don't know. It feels like it was nothing other than signalling to the potential voter base, which are heading off to the Greens, and he's just been taught a lesson that way. I think that's exactly what's happening.
Absolutely.
And I do think it's different. Look, definitely mistakes were made back then. But what kind of plan for the next phase can you have without it being other countries, us, getting involved in regime change? Because what Trump's done, and I'm not naturally a lover of Trump, but I'm a pragmatist and I'm willing to look at outcomes. If you were trying to describe and prescribe what's going to be the next phase, then that's the level of regime change that we don't like. But when you know people within a country want there to be change, and if you can assist that, that seems fine. That's the correct level to do, because then it's up to the people of Iran who want to be free of this theocratic oppression to then do something about it, and whatever they choose, what kind of country they create is the one that they're in charge of, as things should be across the world.
But also the interim government, the next interim government, is vitally important. If you look at what's happened in Syria, the interim government that took over after America was involved there, has been a disaster, and the situation in Syria is not good again. And we must be very, very careful to ensure and support Trump in making sure that the interim government in Iran actually works and is supported by the majority of the Iranian people.
Well, yeah, Steve, how do you see this playing out?
Well, I just hope things go back to the way, you know, those memes online of how that country used to be in the 70s. You got to hope that somehow they've got the ability to get back to being a prosperous nation with a good economy, with freedom for men and women. There's a thought. Let's try and spread that around. So you know that in their core, in their DNA, that's what that nation wants to be. How we get there, I don't know. All you got to hope for is that the next phase of government doesn't have some other sort of sewn-in theocracy in it. I'm sure there'll be some, gang of Muslim Brotherhood people trying to work out what to do next. The lessons shouldn't really be brought from Iraq. It's more like looking at Egypt. It's more like looking at what happened in the Arab Spring to work out what could go wrong. Learn the lessons from that, and let's hope things don't go that way.
Steve, you are no Donald Trump cheerleader, but does the Orange one deserve credit for his efforts on the world stage, whether it was those early strikes on Iran that paved the way, some would argue, for the Gaza peace deal, or this latest move in Iran?
Yes, definitely. I'm also willing to say, look, there was that weird time when Donald Trump was saying, rise up, we will protect you, and didn't. And that's an unfortunate event. Maybe the Armada just simply wasn't there at the right time. I don't think we'll look back at that as a good time. Lives were lost there. But this is the outcome where, yes, if you are the world police, every so often you do have to do a little bit of world policing. And I know the MAGA base, the natural way that Trump was selling himself pre-election, wasn't setting these things up. So I'm actually happy that this, no, not happy, but I'm happy Trump has done this, if you know what I mean. I'm happy he was there to try and help some people in a different country where he could have just been America first about it and thoroughly ignored. And I think the world will end up being a safer place because of the actions of Donald Trump. And I never thought I'd say that out loud.
Well, there you go. Listen, it's all about busting those narratives, isn't it? And escaping our echo chambers, which is something you help us do on a regular basis. Steve, tell us about your excellent YouTube show, because it's tearing up the internet at the moment.
It's ruining the internet, you're right. YouTube.com/@Mr. Stephen Allen, where the latest edition on Fridays, where we do something that's not necessarily as serious, I've plugged myself a Casio keyboard in. So if you want to see me doing news whilst also doing some bad chords and singing, the internet's not ready for it. Somehow I'm doing it.
We love it. Huge fans. Stephen Allen, loving your work. We'll catch up very, very soon. Has Donald Trump made the world a safer place? 7:18. This is Talk Breakfast.
Every Monday to Wednesday, midnight until 1, it is Talkback.
Such a shortage of housing. You've got landlords, right, have taken that on board, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Your stories, your opinions, it is your chance to have your say.
So they're literally just being rented out as hotels, basically?
Yeah, rent a load of hotels.
Well, that has really shone a light for me.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
7:20 Talk Breakfast. Davis is directing our TV output today, so if you'd like to watch the show, head to YouTube and search Talk. I'd recommend you do, because we're going to be hearing from voices from around the world and across the political spectrum on this breaking news. Front page of The Sun on Sunday. War on Iran. Tehran blitzed by Donald Trump. Khamenei's palace hit. President, he was killed. The headline, Ayatollah dead. Iranian tyrant leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was assassinated in the deadly missile blitz by the US and Israel. Donald Trump announced last night. The US president posted on Truth Social, one of the most evil people in history is dead. So has Donald Trump made the world a safer place? Here's a voice note from Nick.
Good morning, Mark. It's Nick from Loughborough. Of course, the whole world should rejoice in what's happened in Iran. For far too long, Iran has been the nerve centre for international Islamic terrorism, and for far too long, Western liberal democracies have refused to acknowledge it and refused to act on it. And finally, Donald Trump has come in and lanced the biggest boil on the world's backside, and we should all be grateful. We should all be grateful. The world is now a safer place for him having done so. Mark, have a good weekend.
Nick, thank you for a brilliant voice note, and the metaphor of the day, the world's biggest boil has been popped in the form of Iran. Does Donald Trump deserve congratulations and thanks for thwarting Iran's efforts to have nuclear weapons? Of course, that is at the heart of this strategic move. Peter is in Somerset. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning to you, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. And as we wake up to the news that Iran has been struck by US and Israeli forces, what is your reaction?
Well, I think this is going to be a long and hard thing to accomplish, because for real peace to be in Iran, you've got to look at the whole makeup of the country and also the Middle East. It's not just about countries and the Muslim faction, it's about tribes. And we've seen this before, that, you know, if you think, go back years and years ago when the Shah was deposed, obviously it was in a bad state. And you had then the rise of the fanaticism in Iran. But then they were also fighting with Iraq all the time. And when Mr. Blair, I won't call him Sir Tony because I just despise the guy so much, went in and destabilised, going in the second time and destabilised that whole part. We saw the rise of ISIS. We saw all this disaffected and the internal fighting. And all you did is you took your eye off the ball and saw the emboldenment of Tehran, and then they were able to get on with their stockpiling nuclear or trying to create nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
I think what going forward, what's going to happen now is that Trump and the American sort of the military might there has got to deal with the Iranian Navy. Because we've got to be mindful of what happens in the Straits of Hormuz if they don't get rid of that. And they've got a job to do, and it's only just the beginning. You've got also the Israelis who are really going to be pleased about this. But of course, as we saw yesterday, that strike yesterday was the Israelis. They knew exactly where the leader was, but again, they know he's a figurehead. So the poor people, I mean, they have no arms there. So the military might of the USA has got to be to do something with the Iranian, the Guard, and all of the military side of it, because otherwise, if they don't do that, you're going to see a huge amount of internal struggling, people dying. And also, it's very interesting that none of the Emirates and other places have not stepped up to condemn this, because it's in their interest. You know, we had the Abraham Accord that was going to be signed before Hamas went in to Israel, and you know, of course, it suits them to have better relations with the West. But you know, let's be under no illusion. By that figurehead going doesn't mean to say that the problem is solved.
Are you calling this as a potential false dawn, Peter?
No, I think it's the beginning. I agree, it's the beginning, but I think there are hard yards to travel in order to get stability, because you've got a lot of disaffected people there who know full well that they face retribution. They may lay down our arms today, but let's remember the Israelis have got very good memories. Look how they're picking off day by day the Hamas fighters. It's a long and complicated thing. As long as the rest of the Arab world remains silent on this, we stand a good chance of doing it. But the job is not over. There's a lot more to be done. Hence the reason they've got such a battle fleet in the Gulf, because, world trade, they can disrupt world trade. So it's a really, really critical time.
Peter, thank you for a brilliant call and a very, very coherent set of arguments there. Cautious optimism from Peter, but a lot of work lies ahead.
Yeah, as I said at the outset, this is the beginning, and it's a question now of what happens now and how that is managed in as much as it can be managed. I mean, it's easy for us to sit here and say this should happen, but if you're not actually in the country, it's very hard to tell exactly how the situation is going to develop. One hopes that it is going to be managed well and that there will be a positive outcome. There are always going to be spots of terrorism from these kind of people, the fanatics. Unfortunately, they won't be completely removed. We're not ending that threat. So it'll be permanent threat. As for the other countries around, particularly in the Gulf, the UAE and Bahrain, they are small countries, very small, and they don't have much military say, but they are all very anti-Iran and have been so for a very long time. And the Saudis are very anti-Iran, which all of this is extremely helpful in the sense that the pressure on Iran is going to now become a civilized country again, without torture and also the horrible treatment of women particularly. Hopefully we can get there, but there are a lot of problems along the way, and a lot of them are problems that Trump will have to deal with in his own backyard, because the Democrats and the lefty lovies in America are all against this action and have said so, as you'd expect. The likes of the appalling Gavin Newsom in California, who thinks he's James Taylor or living in the 60s and a kind of hippie. I mean, the lefty lot in America really do look the most dreadful people. They look more and more less credible by the hour. And I think I tried to understand what Kamala Harris, who, God forbid, said she's going to stand for president again. I can't believe any sensible American could ever vote for that woman. But Trump has got a lot of problems coming up domestically. He's got the midterm elections where he's going to do badly and lose control of the House, which I think will mean it's much harder for him to do all the things he's been doing.
He'll be a lame duck president.
He will become a lame duck president, rather like Starmer, who's a lame duck prime minister, because he knows his time is over. He's just sort of seeing when he'll go, not if he'll go. He's got no power. He's proved he can't make any decisions. Macron in France is a lame duck president. Europe is now run really by Giorgia Meloni in Italy and Friedrich Merz in Germany. Germany now is the power that runs Europe. France and England and Great Britain, rather, are just nowhere in the scheme of things. And what's happened to the coalition of the willing, by the way, Mr. Starmer?
Well, you have to wonder. Glad you mentioned Meloni, by the way, the Italian Prime Minister, because she's introduced conservative policies which have boosted the economy, attracted wealth creators to Milan and elsewhere, including some of our billionaires. And she's also massively clamped down on illegal immigration. But we were told she was far right. I'm so confused, Piers.
Yes, I know. I mean, this is what the left do. They call everyone far right or Nazis because they don't like them.
She's probably the most successful leader in Europe.
Yes, she is. And she's very popular. She seems to have immense charisma. She's doing what she said she was going to do. And for an Italian Prime Minister to have lasted as long as she has is quite miraculous.
It's pretty spectacular. It's my view that Angela Merkel was one of the worst chancellors in German history. Maybe not the worst.
Absolutely no.
Perhaps the second worst.
Yes.
And Maloney, what a hero. We could do with some of that here, that bold leadership. Talking of bold leaderships, Samara Gill, right? Samara Gill is one of our most fantastic talents here on Talk. She's a presenter and a broadcaster. She was at the Iranian embassy yesterday speaking to folk. Take a listen.
It's the best day of my life, and for many Iranians. We don't know how we're feeling. It's just happiness, it's sadness, it's grief for thousands and thousands that have been dead by this government.
Our country is finally free. We're so happy. I don't know.
What does tomorrow look like?
The first day of freedom. Yeah.
Thank you. Congratulations. There you go. How are you feeling?
So ecstatic! We're gonna be free!
He's dead. How are you feeling?
Amazing!
Yeah?
If he's dead.
He is. They've confirmed it. How are you feeling?
Such a fantastic feeling. Unbelievable. Happy for the Iranian people.
It's a great day for Iran and Iranians everywhere. It's a great day for freedom, and it's a very emotional night.
I love you, Trump. I love you, Trump.
For years they told us that it is impossible, that you need to do reform. We say no. This is not a reform movement. This is not a movement. This is not a protest. Islamic Republic, listen very carefully. Your dictator is dead. This is a revolution.
There you go. It's emotional here. The people are free for the first time in decades.
Samara, what a brilliant report. Thank you so much. You've got Londoners there with connections to Iran. They're Iranians, expats. They've got family there. They are crying for joy. Yeah. And there are people in Tehran now. By the way, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of women on the streets with no head coverings.
Yeah,
chanting the name of Donald Trump.
Well, there you are.
What a funny old world.
That? It is. It's extraordinary.
But I thought he was a misogynist. Again, I'm very confused.
No, I mean, yeah, it's wonderful to see those Iranians talking with such emotion, because it shows they care about the country, and also how distressed they've been at the appalling dictatorship that has run the regime and is now mercifully gone. And also, of course, you doing it in the name of religion makes it even worse. To claim it is the word of God that's teaching them to do all these things is absolutely preposterous. Of course, it's just a cover for brutal dictatorship. I mean, if anyone's a Nazi, the Ayatollah Khomeini was a Nazi. That's a proper definition of a Nazi.
It's a regime that wishes the death of all Jews and the destruction of Israel. So
yeah, I would call that pretty Nazi-like.
He's not a fan.
No.
Piers, we are such a big fan of yours. Thank you for your deep expertise, knowledge
pleasure.
And instincts. Unlike Starmer, you tend to be on the right side of most arguments.
I do my best, Mark.
Never knowingly wrong. Piers Pottinger, thank you so much. A broadcaster, political commentator, and one of the country's best connected public relations experts. So much more to come. Is the world a safer place under Donald Trump? And where was Keir Starmer when America needed our help? 70 to 34, this is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You're listening to Talk Breakfast. Let's have a look at the front page, if we can, Davis, of the Sunday Telegraph. Khamenei dead in rubble. Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, were shown a picture of the Ayatollah's body after compound struck. Massive attacks on Islamic Republic by US and Israel in push for regime change. Iran retaliates against Israel and hits 5 Gulf states, including a hotel in Dubai. Here is a voice note from Dallas, whose father was in the Air Force, and she's giving her reaction to the news that we are hopefully seeing the beginning of the end of this authoritarian, theocratic regime.
Good morning, Mark and Pierce. This is Dallas out in Botswana. My father was a career navigator in the Royal Air Force for many, many years, and I can assure you both that all over Britain now, in RAF crew mess rooms, in squadron rooms, all over the place, there will be RAF personnel sitting on their hands, absolutely desperate for Keir Starmer to give them the go-ahead so they can fly off and do what they're paid for, keeping the country safe and making the world a safer place. They will be desperate. What is this man doing to Britain? I have no idea. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Well, this feels like a political scandal in the making, as the Prime Minister chose not to offer UK air bases for the US strikes on Iran. Let's get reaction to that and the breaking news that the leader of this regime in Iran has been killed. Paul Harris is the editor of the Jewish Telegraph. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning. Well, I'm actually in Israel at the moment. I arrived on Friday, so been living through all the alerts here. They first started yesterday morning, just before breakfast, and we were in and out of the shelter in the hotel all day long. It's been extraordinary here because during the day, first of all, yesterday, there was an extraordinary feeling of camaraderie. Every Israeli hotel has safe rooms, and in particular one, I'm in a place called Herzliya Pituach, which is about a 20-minute drive north of Tel Aviv, and the car park here, one of the car parks in the hotel, is actually a safe area. So we were all shunted in there, shuffled in there after breakfast and during breakfast yesterday. It was pretty dramatic, but the sense of camaraderie was incredible. There was laughing and joking and singing, and it was in and out of the shelter throughout the day, and people were actually reserving seats with towels, rather like by a swimming pool, because there wasn't that much space to sit around. And then every floor has a safe room. Last night it was quite remarkable because we ended up in a laundry room on our floor, which is a safe room in the hotel. And there were a couple of Israeli couples in there. And it was getting towards the end of Sabbath. One of the men there was a strawberry grower, and he brought us in fresh strawberries he had brought with him to the hotel. And then at the end of Sabbath, there is a ceremony called Havdalah, and he invited us, together with his wife, to his room, and on the balcony, they'd had a small ceremony to see out the end of Sabbath with the candles and the wine and the blessings. And, of course, there were whoops of joy in the hotel when people heard the news of Khamenei's death. During the night, it's been fairly quiet here in Herzliya, but about 6 o'clock this morning, we started getting the alerts. And the way it works is you get an immediate one on the phone, which is a general alert to the whole country that there is an emergency situation. And then in the hotel, for instance, we have speakers in the room, loudspeakers, and they alert people to get to the shelter. And minutes after, there is an app that Israelis use, which I have on my phone. You set it for a particular area you're in, and it gives you an alarm, a siren, and it tells you to get to the safe room as soon as possible. And then you hear sirens going all over the streets. I mean, it's reminiscent of World War II, the films we see. You hear the sirens all over the streets. But there's a general sense of optimism and joy here, despite what's happened just 20 minutes away from where I'm sitting at the moment in Tel Aviv, where there were injuries and an entire street was wiped out by a rocket that did get through the defense system.
And we've all got skin in the game, haven't we, Paul? Because notwithstanding that the Iranian regime hates all Jews, wishes the destruction of Israel. They hate the entire West. So Israel's fight is ours.
Yeah, but this is also quite remarkable when we hear that Dubai was hit, Bahrain was hit. I mean, one can only imagine that one of the reasons they've done this is, of course, it was because Israel actually made peace with the UAE. And I suppose these places are now considered to be the enemy too. I think Israelis now hope that possibly the country can get back to the good old days when, in fact, Israel and Iran had good relations. The time of the Shah, Israel used to supply weapons to Iran, and there was a friendship between the two countries. Maybe not so bizarre, but this could actually happen again.
Most definitely. How do you see this playing out, Paul? It's one thing to use military expertise to achieve these strikes, which so far have been very successful, but there's a long road ahead, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a hell of a long road ahead because obviously a lot of the Ayatollah's acolytes are still around. These are obviously the people who are masterminding the continued rocket attacks on Israel and elsewhere. Until the rest of the evil regime is wiped out, I don't think there can be a regime change. But one gets the feeling that the vast majority of Iranians do want this to happen. They've been suppressed for too long in the name of religion. And hopefully there will be democracy there of some sort where the people themselves will decide who rules the country.
What will British Jews make of the news that the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, did not make UK air bases available for these strikes on Iran?
Well, I think this is yet another example of his lily-livered approach. We've seen, and I actually put this question to him a few weeks ago in Downing Street, that he recognised prematurely a Palestinian state. And this did nothing for the safety of British Jews. In fact, I suggested to him that he'd actually emboldened the enemies of Israel and Jewry by giving them some sort of legitimacy in this. And again, I think British Jewry will see that he's not really on the side of right. And how long he can last in that position, goodness only knows. But British Jewry will be quite distressed, very disappointed in him. But I think also the other thing that for British Jewry and Jews around the world is that there will be heightened security at communal events, synagogues and schools. We've already got heightened security. And as we know, only the week before last, Rachel Reeves announced a new £10 million plan. £10 million in aid further was given to the Community Security Trust to secure schools and Jewish communal buildings. But I think there's going to be heightened security without any doubt at all.
There most definitely is. And of course, worth remembering that Iran is the biggest backer of terror on the planet.
That's right, and this is worrying, and we will be on the alert throughout the Jewish community because of this, never knowing where terror can strike again. And I think Israelis are definitely very alert today. As I said, there have been further rocket attacks, further alerts all morning, and we're expecting that to happen during the day. In fact, I'm very surprised that during this broadcast, the sirens haven't gone off again. You might have got some indication of what Israelis are facing and what they face a lot of their daily lives.
Paul, do you see this regime in Tehran falling?
I do. I think it's going to take time, though, as this is what I was saying to you earlier. I don't think it will be immediate. Will there be civil war in Iran? Who knows? But the movement appears to be that most Iranians do not want to see this terror state continuing. They don't want to see it be dictated by religious fanatics. Women want to be free to do what they want, to drive, to dress as they want. I would see this happening. I wouldn't imagine it'd be weeks, but who knows, months possibly. We could see this regime change, and I think this would be very good news for the rest of the world.
So we might see the regime fall by Christmas. Here's hoping, Paul. And what about your appraisal of Trump's leadership on this one? Not all Jews would naturally ally with the MAGA project, but on this one, does he deserve credit?
Well, he certainly deserves credit, but of course one has to remember that Israel's part in this. This was a joint operation, very much so, and I understand that up to 200 Israeli fighter jets flew out on this mission. You have to remember that Donald Trump is extremely popular in Israel anyhow. He was the person who masterminded the move of the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. This was a massive statement. There's even a street named after him in Jerusalem as a result of this. So Donald Trump is extremely popular here, but it appears now that he's extremely popular in Tehran. Isn't that bizarre?
Well, it is indeed. They're chanting his name. What is your view of the political left, Paul, who seem to have been very loud on Gaza and very quiet on Iran?
It's always the case. When it comes to Jews and Israel, this is exactly what happens. It's always Israel wrong, Israel wrong. Hopefully, they might get the message now that Israel has done the world a great service. And I think that Israel's involvement in this action against Iran should not be underestimated. I heard some of the interviews earlier from the streets of London where Trump was being praised. I think Netanyahu and Israel deserve equal praise.
He must be. He's Israel's Churchill, isn't he? Because this is the same prime minister whose leadership saw the dismantling and defeat of Hamas. And of course, those strikes prior to the Gaza peace deal on Iran were strategically very successful too.
Exactly. Although the fact is that it was under his watch that the October the 7th attacks happened, and he was widely criticised for this. But we've often described him editorially in our own paper as the comeback kid because he seems to bounce back when necessary. And I think there will be a lot of people in Israel who might today have changed their opinion of him because this action, together with America, is dramatic. It's world changing. It's going to affect world politics without any doubt. And I would be very surprised if there isn't a cessation of the rockets coming over from Iran. I'd be very surprised if there were not further strikes trying to wipe out any nuclear sites in Iran, which obviously Israel has done previously.
Many British Jews have a tradition, don't they, Paul, of being on the political left. Has that changed within the British Jewish community in the aftermath of October the 7th?
I think this changed under the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn, and the Jewish vote, as it is, has never returned to Labour. Labour was the natural home of the Jewish voter, but I think things have changed dramatically, and I think you'll see a lot of Jewish people actually moving towards reform. There's pretty little doubt about this, and obviously a lot of British Jews have also traditionally voted Conservative, but I think reform is going to see a big sea change in this also and receive quite a large amount of Jewish votes.
Now, that's quite a story, isn't it? Why would British Jewish people come over to reform rather than, let's say, the Conservatives? What's giving Farage the edge for some, Paul?
I think some people like to hear what he says. There have been misgivings about some of the things we've heard from his school days. People seem to feel that this is schoolboy banter. I personally don't, but there are others who feel that he is worth a shot. There's no doubt that Labour have lost the support of the Jewish community, I mean, dramatically so. And as I said, this goes back to the rampant anti-Semitism in the party, which was never discouraged by Jeremy Corbyn.
Paul, a privilege to have you on the programme, and can I wish you and your friends and loved ones all the very best in Israel as you navigate a very unpredictable situation, and more power to you for joining us on Talk this morning and telling us what's happening on the ground in Israel. Paul Harris is the editor of the Jewish Telegraph. Very interesting, his comments there. British Jews quite traditionally on the left, on this sort of intelligentsia side of the political debate, some heading over to Farage and Reform UK at the next election. So much more to get through. Is the world a safer place under Donald Trump? This is Talk Breakfast.
We genuinely are on resignation watch. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson, who faces a criminal investigation.
Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? We have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from Number 10. Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is thickening. The noose is tightening.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk breakfast at 7:52. Dolan's dispatch on the way at 9 a.m. Why did our Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, not support US strikes on Iran, which, with any luck, will bring down this wicked regime, the biggest sponsor of global terror? Front page of The Sun on Sunday, war on Iran, Ayatollah dead is the headline. Tehran blitzed by Trump and Netanyahu. Khamenei's palace hit. President announces he was killed. Let's get further reaction. I'm delighted to welcome Talk's royal correspondent, Rupert Bell. Good morning, Rupert.
Good morning, Mark.
And there is a royal element to this because, of course, the Duke of Sussex has been in the Middle East in recent days. What timing?
Yeah, well, he was on one of his quasi-royal visits to Jordan, and obviously one of the things that he's always beefed about is security. Well, the last 48 hours suggested there's not particularly secure anywhere in the Middle East. I don't know whether Jordan has suffered any of the attacks that, say, Dubai and Qatar, Bahrain have all suffered over the last 24 hours. So, again, sometimes you see that they've managed to get somewhere and their hypocrisy is writ large about security issues because, as I say, Jordan is, in the Middle East, as we know, and there they were glad-handing and pretending they are still part of the royal family. Definitely a quasi-royal visit. I'm not sure what the purpose of it was. I think they were invited by the World Health Organization. I assume the British government and the rest of the royal family were aware of their visit, but obviously gave them no obvious support to what they were doing in Jordan.
And it hasn't escaped our attention, Rupert, that they were accommodated at a luxury hotel suite, which weighed in at the small matter of £3,000 a night, or maybe $4,500 a night on their humanitarian tour.
I'd like to see the receipts, whether they actually paid for it. So that would be interesting. I don't know whether they did or didn't, but they do like to make sure they're well looked after. And I'm sure there are plenty of riders when they do go to visit these places as to the level of accommodation. So it is interesting. As I say, I'm not sure what it achieved, but it is trying to give them a look of having some purpose, because obviously from a commercial point of view, their brand has taken quite a battering.
Most definitely. And as you quite rightly said, it's a quasi-royal tour. world. They are cosplay royals. They want to have their cake and eat it, Rupert, saying that they're desperate for privacy whilst indulging in a world privacy tour with podcasts, TV documentaries and books. And they don't want to be frontline serving royals, but travel the world as pretend prince and princess. This is an issue, isn't it? Do you know how this trip has gone down with the palace?
Well, I wouldn't know. I think events seem to have conspired, so we haven't been able to get any reaction. But I think
they can't love it, can they?
No, and they can't comment on it. Let's be honest. It's not their, they are going about their business as private citizens. They might have let the Foreign Office know, and indeed the royal family know, as just a sort of some sort of mark of respect, because the royal family do have, their soft power is part of the role of the royal family.
Yes.
But obviously within, it was noticeable that members of the Jordanian royal family didn't rush to meet them. I don't think they did, because they're quite friends with the Prince and Princess of Wales. So they managed to avoid some sort of family tensions there by not being seen, which probably would have upset the Sussexes, because that would have given them a degree of authenticity if members of the Jordanian royal family had turned up to glad hand them whilst they were there.
And William won't be too happy with these international trips, will he? This is a guy that feels his brother's got to make a decision about whether he's a member of the royal family or not, and that decision was made in 2020.
Yeah, and this is the problem for the royal family. Harry, he's a private, he can do what he likes, but you do know it has the look of a royal tour. And this is the frustrations for the royal family, that they want to grab the headlines. And at the moment, the royal family are sort of keeping a low profile for obvious reasons, because of all the fallout from Andrew and the Epstein and Sarah Ferguson's, what's been going on there. And so they've not been doing too much in terms of getting on the front foot. So it is frustrating for them that the Sussexes decide to have another one. I think they've been to Nigeria, they've been to Colombia, now they've been to Jordan. Where next for them to be seen to be doing their idea of good work?
You're right. We've got Africa, we've had Mexico, Ukraine, of course. Lots of dangerous places, but obviously Mayfair in central London would be the most dangerous, which is why Harry needs armed security when he's in the capital. This trip wasn't without controversy for another reason, Rupert, which is that I think one of the charities that they attended was led by, or the management team contained someone that appears to have been quite supportive of Hamas's actions in the last few years, and potentially October the 7th. So that's the problem for Harry and Meghan. If they go to the powder keg of the Middle East, it's going to be controversial.
Yeah, and particularly as I think they've sort of made known their support for Palestinian causes, which is fine, but it's going to lead to them to, find one or two people who may be associated with Hamas and other organizations out there. So it's not easy, but it's the trouble at times. The Sussexes don't always read the room and get themselves into a bit of a mess. And if they have found that some of the charities they're working for have some people who have sort of crossed over and are supporting organizations that have issues, then it's not a good look for the Sussexes. I'm not sure. We haven't really read too much about it, so I'm not sure it's probably achieved the kind of profile, apart from seeing her change clothes a few times on the same day. I'm not sure what actually this trip has achieved. Events have certainly taken over since their visit to...
Thank you so much. More to come.
the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Three minutes past 8, Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m. And breaking this morning, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, is dead following targeted airstrikes on Tehran by the United States and Israel. But why didn't Britain help? With the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, refusing the United States permission to use British air bases. And what next for this authoritarian regime? Will the Revolutionary Guard concede? Is there hope for a country that's been in the grip of totalitarian religious rule since 1979? And with Iran's efforts to build nuclear weapons now thwarted, is the world a safer place as we wake up this morning? And does Donald Trump deserve credit? Will history judge Trump for this bold and decisive action? We're going to bring you reaction from military figures, politicians and journalists from around the world and across the political spectrum. But what do you think? Is the world now a safer place? And does Donald Trump deserve credit? And where is Starmer? And why didn't he help the United States to bring down this wicked regime, which is the world's biggest supporter of global terror? My number is 0344 499 1000. Tommy is taking your calls. He's brought me a cup of tea, which is absolutely essential this morning because we've got so much to get through. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222 or leave us a voice note. I'm delighted to have your company on the radio, DAB+, in-app and online, or you can watch the show. Just head to YouTube, search Talking Up We Pop. It's well worth a watch because we've got guests from around the world on the big story of the day. Starmer goes AWOL, destroys his special relationship, and Trump, is he a hero? As the saying goes, let's talk. So much to get through. We will kick off the hour with a voice note. Can we hear from Michael, please?
Morning, Mark. Mike in Cheshire here. Starmer has a fundamental problem in Britain because we're stuffed to the gunnels with thousands upon thousands of potential terrorists and religious fanatics. The security services would not be able to cope with this. Hence, Starmer has distanced Britain from American actions.
Michael, you're right. I can tell you at 8:05 in the morning that Britain is full of terrorists, or those with a terrorist mentality that would wish harm on our own people. You are so right. Proven terror links to some people crossing the boats. And if it's one person crossing the boats, crossing the channel illegally, that is one too many, because you could have a Manchester Arena or any number of such atrocities. Thank you for that. How about this from Pete?
Good morning, Mark. I think the attack on Iran had to be done at some point or other, so there's probably no point messing around. Get this, while they probably thought they were in a weaker position and they could take them out, and which they have done and are continuing to do. Now is the time that the Iran people must rise up against this horrible government, because I don't think they'll ever get another chance, and otherwise they'll be suppressed and oppressed forever. As for Starmer, feathers the penguin, nothing behind his eyes, is there, when you look at him? And, you know, a cynic might think, have a certain demographic in this country actually got something on Starmer, that he constantly backs them all the time, gives them things, rather than backing the remainder of the country, the vast majority of this country? Nothing ever matters to him apart from the feelings of a certain demographic, including all those that come in on dinghies. It's starting to stand out like a sore thumb. He really has to resign over this. Apart from all the other scandals of Labour this weekend that have come out, he must resign, and his government really must call a general election, especially for this not letting Trump use Britain to take this attack to Iran from.
Well, a powerful voice note. Pete, you've kicked off the conversation in style in this 8 o'clock hour on Talk Breakfast, and someone that's going to help me do that as well is the brilliant Peter Barnes, broadcaster and political strategist. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning.
And this feels like another political headache for the Prime Minister.
Yes.
Front page of the Sunday Times, Peter. Rao as PM fails to let America use British air bases. This man is politically inept, isn't he? Because if he'd allowed us to use those air bases, he preserves the special relationship. His messaging is that he wants to help dismantle a tyrannical regime, and he could have shared the political spoils. But as always, this is the guy that's the broken clock that's not even right twice a day. This was a terrible political judgment.
This wasn't just a terrible political judgment, it was a bad moral judgment as well. I think we can now officially say that that man has no right to step into that office that held Thatcher and Winston Churchill. I think we have now a very clear reason to force his resignation, that should be no member of the Labour Party if he remains leader. Everybody should walk out of that party immediately. We let down an ally who is attacking a leader of a terrorist organisation, because that's what the leader of Iran was. They were the biggest funders and the biggest proliferators of radical Islam in the world. That organisation would planned 20+ terrorist attacks to happen here in London and the United Kingdom. And Keir Starmer didn't let the US use the bases. That is it's just beyond words about how serious this actually is.
Iran was running a global terror network, the Houthis in Yemen, Hamas and Hezbollah, bankrolling terror, misery and death.
Yes, without a shadow of a doubt.
And Starmer can't make available a couple of UK air bases.
Worse, he hid behind international law and the UN Charter. He categorically said there was no imminent threat. That is a fundamental lie. If you read the IAEA reports, which is the International Atomic Energy Authority, which they go into Iran to make sure they look at all their nuclear weapon, the development, they said that they were at 60%. That was when they were allowed in. That means that they were only 30% of enriched uranium, which is a nuclear weapon. That is not a matter of years or months, that is weeks. They were weeks away from it. This is a man who has shown nothing, the Khamenei, that he wanted to not have it, but to use the weapons. And Keir Starmer said there is no imminent threat. Those weapons have the potential to hit the United Kingdom and our allies in NATO. It is unbelievable to me that that man said what he said and somehow seemed proud of it. That's the bit that disgusted me the most. When he stood there and said Britain did not get involved, he seemed happy with it. He seemed proud of that. I think it was yet again a dark, black stain, because I go back to the point that he recognised the state of Palestine whilst Israelis were still being held hostage. This man has a track record now of standing with our enemies and standing against the moral right. He's not fit to be in that office anymore.
He's used the excuse, the fig leaf of international law, which is the natural, happy, safe place of a human rights lawyer. Is he also atoning for the crimes of Tony Blair in the first Iraq war? Or is this bowing to the woke left of his own party, who don't want to see the condemnation of or unseating of any Islamic regime?
I actually think it's more on the lines that he wants to be friends with all his European leader allies, because they're only meeting on Monday. They're having an emergency meeting on Monday.
Another talking
shop. That is all they want to do. Donald Trump will be remembered as a president of action. And that is what the world has missed. This idea that it's 4D chess and all this kind of thing that he's doing, it's not. It's called statecraft. We used to have leaders that did it, and they did it very well.
He's leveraging American military
that's
strength
the key word.
to make the world a safer place. Because what is his stated aim? It's not actually necessarily regime change, although I think it's become that now. It was simply ensuring that Iran never have nuclear weapons.
And that is the be-all and end-all.
And they did try to negotiate.
Yes, and this is the key point, is that they literally sat there for weeks and weeks and weeks. There was supposed to be another meeting. This was
Witkoff
in Geneva.
and Kushner.
Yeah, and there was supposed to be another one in Vienna next week, but that, obviously I doubt that's going to happen. But this was the point, is that they were now so close to achieving their aims of nuclear weapons. That changed the game. That changed the game, the board, as we always say. But the fact that Britain was not involved in one of the fundamental moments of world history that will be remembered for centuries is a damning indictment of this nation. The one thing I will say is that maybe, just maybe, he might have saved some lives, because our army is not equipped, it is not trained, It is not fit for purpose, and that is his fault as well, because yet again, we have got warnings after warnings that we need more money for defence, but no, we funnel it into welfare. It is absolutely damning.
And as you said in the past, pontificating on what a woman is,
yes,
whilst Rome burns.
Exactly.
Welcome to hell. And the Prime Minister talks about his focus on the safety of women and girls.
Lie.
Now, this is a man, first of all, he doesn't know what a woman is. And secondly, he was very reluctant to have a national inquiry into the Pakistani Muslim rape gangs. But also, he doesn't want to do his part to tackle a regime in Iran that has murdered upwards of 40,000 of its own people for daring to protest the regime, and a regime which is particularly tyrannical towards women. And we've got the tragic story, do we not, which ought to have been a watershed moment in 2022. And this was an amazing lady, Mahsa Amini, 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian woman, died after being arrested by Iran's morality police for allegedly not wearing her hijab properly. That should have been a moment where the left, who was so worried about the safety of women and girls, could have woken up. Wake up, they did not.
Yes, the lack of action because of that made the British state complicit in that woman's execution, as far as I'm concerned. The Prime Minister has her blood and everybody else's on his hands, and unfortunately on ours. It is British reputation that will be forever stained because of this decision. We are now out of the club, as they say. Israel basically want nothing to do with us. They've wanted nothing to do with us for a while. We're simply an irrelevancy now to the Americans. And this is not just going to end, well, when Trump goes, it might go back to normal. It won't. The Americans remember when they were left hanging high and dry. And because this is the point. Not having access to places like Diego Garcia or the base in Qatar and the one in Cyprus meant that the runs that the US Air Force were doing were longer, more dangerous, and put US service personnel at risk. That is the key point about why the Americans are apoplectic, is because the runs that they had to do, in other words, the bombing campaigns, meant that their service personnel were put in greater risk than would have been necessary.
The peerless and fearless Peter Barnes is with me until 9. Lock the doors, don't let him out, get him a cup of tea. We've got to bring you this breaking news. Sunday Times, Israel, Ayatollah is no longer after Iran. Blitz, Sun newspaper, Ayatollah dead. Is regime change the next thing to happen? Isabel Oakeshott is Talk's international editor. And Isabel, you're in the Middle East, I understand.
Yeah, good morning, Mark. I am in the heart of Dubai, and at the moment, all is relatively quiet. Now, it wasn't a couple of hours ago, and it certainly wasn't through the night. But at the moment, it is sort of eerily calm and in a sense, almost slightly normal feeling. I've just walked down Dubai Marina, and there are people who are sort of clearly stocking up, which is a sensible enough thing to do because we don't know what the next few days hold. But the shops are open, the malls are open. There's no real sign of anybody panicking. That said, last night it was a little bit hairy, certainly in terms of the atmosphere here. We all received an emergency alert from the authorities warning us to effectively take cover in case of some kind of imminent attack. I'm very pleased to say that no one to date is known to have been injured as a result of anything like that. And in fact, the UAE defense systems are holding up really very, very well. Just to bring you some official statistics, UAE defenses intercepted 132 out of 137 Iranian missiles and 195 out of 209 drones. And those that were not intercepted, some of them fell in the sea and others fell on UAE territory, mercifully only causing generally minor property damage. So, whilst we are very near the heart of everything that is going on here, and people are still stunned that the UAE has been the subject of a deliberate attack, I mean, absolutely stunned by that, there is definitely a sense that the authorities are doing a very, very good job. Communication is reassuringly frequent. And I think people, feel quite happy to stay put. There's not a mass exodus from Dubai by road that I'm aware of. Most people seem to feel that the safest thing right now is to stay put and continue to function as normally as possible.
Most definitely. Well, Dubai's famous Fairmont, the Palm Hotel, has been hit following the retaliatory strikes by Iran that you mentioned, Isabel. 4 people were reportedly injured in the fire in the Palm Jumeirah area, which has now been brought under control. Why do you think that Dubai was a target?
It's such an interesting question because, you know, this country, the UAE, is the one place that people come in the region for a safe and secure lifestyle. And it may well be that that is the very reason that it has been targeted. The crazy Iranian regime in its death throes is lashing out at a symbol of Western values and prosperity. This still remains, of course, it is a Muslim country, but in many regards, it embodies everything that regime despises. You know, very liberal attitudes here, a very different interpretation of Islam. There is now, there is another theory that one of the reasons that they have targeted the UAE is precisely because it is so full of international residents. You know, the Emiratis are in a tiny minority here, and millions of people from all over the world, including, by the way, lots of Iranians. But they may have targeted on the false assumption or the logic that if they made life tough enough in Dubai, there would be a great deal of international pressure on the White House to pull back. Now, that looks, you know, beyond laughable in terms of being wishful thinking. The president of the United States clearly isn't going to pull back, however much pressure is put on him. We're past the point of no return here, I think.
We spoke, Isabel, earlier in the week on Talk Breakfast, and we both agreed that it was disappointing that the president, Donald Trump, has prevaricated on the Chagos Islands deal, which he was against then for and is now against again. And you mentioned your disappointment that he'd offered help to the Iranian people. I think the quote was, "Help is coming." Well, he kept to his word on that one, didn't he?
He did. That said, it came a lot later than people hoped for. You know, many thousands of beautiful, young, in particular young, innocent Iranians have been murdered in the last few weeks since that message went out. And I feel that the bright spot in that awful tragedy is that now it does appear that they did not die in vain. You know, those brave souls, they went out, they took their life in their hands, and many of them were hanged and executed for their pains. But at least, you know, the result of that, albeit not immediate, appears to be the death of the supreme leader and hopefully the collapse of the regime. That is what those young people and others who took to the streets were dreaming of.
And Isabel, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, will not share any political spoils if the regime falls, because, of course, he prevented the US from having access to UK air bases. What could the consequences of that be politically for the PM? Because my viewers and listeners are spitting with rage that Britain didn't help.
Well, it's just embarrassing for us internationally, isn't it? You know, we still like to think of ourselves as the UK still likes to present itself as a global power. We still, our military armed forces are much diminished, but they are still a reference armed forces for many around the world who look up to our capabilities, albeit we know that they're not at all what they were. And, you know, where is Britain now in terms of helping shape the future of the world? This is absolutely seismic, historic stuff. We should be full square with our American allies, and that hasn't been the case. And I'm really pretty repulsed by the rhetoric from the hard left on social media in the last 24 hours, where they're busy wailing that this was an illegal assault on Iran. I mean, these people, what planet are they on? Do they not understand the nature of the regime that the White House is doing its very best to overthrow? Do they not understand the decades of horror that have been inflicted on this region by the Iranian Ayatollahs? Do they not understand the extent to which that regime destabilizes the whole of the Middle East? Do they not understand the suffering of women and children in particular in Iran? Do they not understand the potential that that country has if it's freed from the shackles of this grotesque regime? It seems to me they don't. And all they can do is bleat about international treaties and law. There is a much, much bigger picture here that they should think about.
They are so blinded by leftist ideology, anti-Israel ideology, anti-Western ideology, Isabel, that they will fall in behind a fascist regime.
It is genuinely unbelievable. Well, these people, by and large, that are commenting in that way from the UK, from the safety of where they feel entitled to pontificate, have little to no understanding of this region. They've probably never been to any of the spots concerned. You know, they're busy shrieking about Israel and Gaza, but they have little understanding of the realities for the Iranian people, and apparently no interest at all in the many tens of thousands of lives lost in recent weeks, which is extraordinary when you think about it. You know, they're still shouting about Gaza, but there's been very little to nothing from the left at all about the atrocities that were perpetrated by this falling regime in recent weeks.
If we see finally, Isabel, the regime fall, which could take weeks or months, how will history judge Donald Trump, who many in establishment media like to characterize as an illiberal monster and a dangerous man?
Well, of course, much depends, you know, if we're going to be frank, much depends on the aftermath of the regime falling. Does the US have a clear plan in place for what happens next? And I'm sure you'd like to think the answer to that will be a resounding yes. After all, we've all learned what happens from history when you don't. You know, the example of Libya, the example of Iraq, the example of Afghanistan. So surely there is a plan in place, and this may almost certainly accounts for just how long it's taken the president to make this move. So assuming that some form of stability is restored in fairly short order, and assuming that the collateral damage around the region is contained, that not too many American lives are lost, that not too many civilians in the region die as a result of this, then I think history will judge Donald Trump as being the one president that actually had the cojones to go for this. The stakes are tremendously high. You know, only have to sit here in the heart of Dubai, where we've had this quite shocking assault over the last 24 hours, to understand how high the stakes are across the whole of the Middle East and beyond. And yet the prize is enormous. This is historic stuff. If you remove that evil regime and replace it with something that is more akin to what we have in the West, I'm not saying it's ever going to be a direct model of that. And in some ways, countries in this region don't necessarily want that type of full democracy. They're not ready for it in many cases. But if something better comes out of this, then that is going to change the entire geopolitical landscape, not only of this region, but of the world.
Briefly, Isabel, is the idea that Starmer has blood on his hands a little inflammatory, or is it appropriate?
I don't feel that's where the debate is at the moment. You know, I feel that that just feels, so it's not that I want to give Starmer a free pass, absolutely far from it. But I think that is to ascribe to us in the UK rather more importance than we have. You know, what much as I'd like Starmer to have at least rhetorically been on the right side of this, to say that he's got blood on his hands, I think is probably taking it too far. I mean, of course, I don't approve of his bizarre and totally unnecessary and inflammatory recognition of the Palestinian state that only served to make things a lot worse here in the region. But it wouldn't be a language that I would use on this day.
Isabel, stay safe and thank you so much for joining us. Isabel Oakeshott is Talk's international editor, live from the United Arab Emirates. She's in Dubai, which has been hit by retaliatory strikes from Iran, whose leader is now dead, but the regime continues. But for how long? At 8:27, this is Talk Breakfast.
We genuinely are on resignation watch. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson, who faces a criminal investigation.
Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? We have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from Number 10. And Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is thickening. The noose is tightening.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m. It's now 8:30. And if anyone was hoping for a quiet Sunday morning, good luck with that. Front page of The Sun on Sunday, war on Iran. Tehran blitzed by Trump. Khamenei's palace hit. President announces he was killed. Ayatollah dead. So is regime change coming? Let's speak now to Professor Ran Balika, who is the Deputy Director General at Israel's Clalit Health Services. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning, Mark.
Thank you very much for your time. Your reaction to this developing story?
Look, these are very challenging times for us here in Israel. You know, a massive attack yesterday took the life of a 40-year-old woman with 20 others that were injured, some severely. Now, in this setting, we, as the largest healthcare system in Israel, we have a huge responsibility. Clalit, it's basically the medical shield of 5 million Israelis. We provide them with primary, specialty, and hospital care all in one organization. And we now have the daily task to ensure that even under fire, more than half of Israel's population has a doctor on their side. Now, that's for needs related and unrelated to the conflict. And it's definitely not easy when missiles are falling all around. So, you know, while the missiles are flying, in our operating room, there's no conflict, only care. You see Jewish, Arab, Christian, Druze, medical teams working as one family to save lives, and this makes us very proud.
If the Iranian regime falls, Professor, how will that change life for everyday Israelis?
You know, we have suffered the atrocities that were inflicted by this regime for so many years. It is almost difficult to imagine a world that is peaceful and is, does not have that. On the medical side, our community have served, so many uncountable events of mass bombings that were encouraged by this regime, missiles bombardments directly performed by them and their proxies. So as a medical professional, all I can hope is that we will need to move our efforts towards what we're good at, innovation, providing better care for the world instead of providing care for people hurt by missiles and bombs.
Most definitely. Of course, the Iranian regime wishes the destruction of Israel, so everybody in that country will be watching in the days ahead to see how this plays out.
It is true. We've been kind of preparing for these moments for quite some time. I'm sitting now at the fourth floor below the ground of Israel's one of the most major Israeli hospitals, where we have turned parking lots into secure spaces for our most severe patients. We've moved ICUs, dialysis patients, women in labor to this underground fortified place in order to provide them care while missiles fall above our heads. So, we are now able to care for all of these people despite this. We've taken 1,000 of our clinics all around the country and fortified them. And now, Sunday morning, they've all opened and provide care as usual for the entire population, despite the fact that missiles continue falling. This is the type of resilience that needs to be built for a country to be able to withstand such continuous aggression for the time that we expect it to take.
Worth remembering, isn't it, Professor, that the Iranian regime supported Hamas and the October the 7th attacks, which were the single biggest attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust?
That is absolutely true. And, we're still mourning as a nation on the events of those days and those weeks. Basically, if you take a look at some of the mental health surveys that we've been performing, those suggest that until this day, and even before this recent conflict has just started, 1 of 5 adults in Israel has a functioning issue, a severe dysfunction on daily lives because of mental health issues. The effect that such of magnitude that has not been withstood by any other country in modern ages. It is something that takes a lot of resilience and a lot of effort to overcome and to come back to care as usual, which I think by now we are slowly getting to achieve.
Professor, a privilege to have you on the programme, and we wish you and the Israeli people well in what is a very traumatic situation, and of course so many question marks about what lies ahead. Can this regime cling on? Is change coming? My thanks to Professor Ran Balika, who is the Deputy Director General at Israel's Clalit Health Services, speaking to us live from Israel. Israel have been subjected to retaliatory strikes from the Iranian regime. Let's take a listen now to a couple of voice notes. Here is Ian on the fallout from the attempt at regime change in Iran.
Hi, Ian from Manchester here. Farage may be quick to support the attack on Iran, but will he accept all the Iranian refugees?
Interesting question. Thank you for posing it, Ian. Travelling Boz, how about this?
Morning, Mark. Travelling Boz here. Yeah, I'm hearing the news about that Khomeini religious leader. Yeah, great news. There's bound to be protests on the streets of London saying that was out of order by the Americans and Israelis. The world will be a safer place, hopefully, but it's got to be done properly. As for Starmer, and he has to pander to his backbenchers and Lord Hermer and all those people say, oh no, you can't get involved, don't take sides with the Americans. I mean, the man has really destroyed any sort of friendship he'd have with Trump, and I don't think Trump rates him at all anyway. So, yeah, I mean, once again, he's pandering to his bosses, old Starmer, because he's not really in charge. Have a good show.
Thank you, Boz. Really appreciate your message. Peter Barnes is with me in the studio, political strategist and talk presenter. And Peter, what's your appraisal of Donald Trump on the world stage in his second administration?
I think even in this first one, I think he's done more for global security and world peace than any other president in the last 40 years, probably since World War II, I imagine, because he's actually done something. I keep going back to this point. We have had the confusion of stagnation and stability, and unfortunately so many things have ratcheted up to this level now because we never took action. We never stick at anything. Unfortunately, war is not, you can't put a deadline on it, and there might be forever wars. We have to get into that mindset, because if the next guy comes up and this goes terribly wrong, we have to put them down, and then we put the next one down, and you put the next one down.
And people are going to die, and that's what happened in Gaza, and it's very sad, but that's what war looks like.
Yes, because war is the necessary evil for freedom. Ronald Reagan made this quote that, you know, it is one generation away from being lost. You have to fight for it. People want to take it away from us. People want to take away our rights to have this conversation, to live our lives as we do, and they have to be stopped. And they're not going to stop with a conference and a lanyard. It is ridiculous to presume that, you know, that peace is, you know, is agreed on in conference rooms. It's not. It's fought with bullets, blood, sweat and tears. And, you know, this nation in World War II was the only nation that went to war on the principle of helping an ally. Everybody else who got involved was attacked or was the attacker. We were the only one that went on principle. That's why it's important that we got involved, because it's not about whether we were the big nation or whether we have any kind of standing in the world. It's about our own self-dignity. And we don't have that anymore, thanks to Starmer, thanks to successive prime ministers who have hollowed out our defences, who's hollowed out our security, who, you know, just will never, ever get it into their heads that something that happens a very long way away actually has a direct effect on our lives now, because everybody is so interlinked. The markets, the economies, everything is interlinked. So it doesn't matter whether it's in China or whether it's, you know, in Croydon. It's all important and it all has an effect, and we have to get in the fight. We're not in the fight.
And you'll never have national security with the cost of servicing debt at £100 billion a year for the interest alone. You'll never have national security with net zero policies which make energy supply expensive and irregular and inconsistent. You'll never have national security with upwards of 9 million working age adults on benefits.
No, you'll also never have national security or any type of security with cowards as leaders, because that's what we've got. This is cowardly. It is weakness, and I make this point all the time. We fundamentally refuse to tackle the big stuff because we are weak and scared about it. Yes, we are haunted by Iraq and we are haunted by Afghanistan, but Iran is not those two nations. I know we had the voice note earlier about the refugee potential crisis. That's not going to happen. The Iranian nation want to go back. They don't want to come here. There's no great exit. There's no exodus today. They want to go back. We have a huge population of Iranians here in the United Kingdom, and they were out on the streets of London celebrating. I mean, you had people in the streets of Tehran shouting, praising Trump. They're praising Trump.
And can you give us a flavour of what life was like in Iran in 1979? Women dressed in Western clothing with no head coverings, thriving universities, a creative hub, culture, films, literature, academia.
Yep, they have over a 3,000-year history. They speak Farsi. They are Persian. They are a proud, principled people. They are there are people to be admired, actually, you know, because they've wanted this freedom for 40 years, nearly 50 years, and we just turned our backs on them. We have the power, the military to a degree, to actually help in some way, and we didn't help a nation and its people that were crying out for help, and they want to talk about human rights. Spare me that nonsense.
Where was Keir Starmer when America and the people of Iran needed our help? 8:41, this is Talk Breakfast.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk Breakfast 8:42. If you're joining us, breaking news. Sun on Sunday front page. War on Iran. Ayatollah dead. Iranian tyrant leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was assassinated in the deadly missile blitz by the US and Israel. Donald Trump's been on social media posting the following: one of the most evil people in history is dead. It is surely cause for celebration, but will the regime fall with its ex-leader? We'll get more reaction in just a moment. We've got more breaking news. And this is in regard to the East Sussex town of Crowborough, where locals have been fighting a plan to accommodate upwards of 500 young men, illegal immigrants, at an army training centre. And it looks like that legal effort to stop it happening has failed. The chairwoman of Crowborough Shield is Kim Bailey. She joins me now. Good morning, Kim.
Morning, Mark.
Kim, what's happened?
Well, obviously, we attended the courts on Wednesday and then we received the judgment on the Friday, where the judge decided that the case had been brought prematurely because it was a technicality that accepted the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, had not, in fact, made her decision when the whole world knows that she had. You know, she was spending millions of pounds worth of taxpayers' money up at the site. But because she had not verbalised the fact that she had made her decision, the judge had to rule that the decision wasn't made and that we had jumped the gun, essentially.
And they were even sending food to this venue, weren't they?
Yeah, there were food trucks going up the whole week before. There was every piece of evidence that this decision was made. Now, we've always known that the Home Secretary was going to try and sink us financially, essentially, and make this so expensive that, you know, we wouldn't be able to see it through. And obviously this has now added another huge cost, because to resubmit, and obviously our statutory deadline is Wednesday. If we don't resubmit the case on Wednesday, then that is it. The judge made it very, very clear that we do have an arguable case. So if we resubmitted with a different date on the form, that we essentially can go forward with it. Well, he obviously didn't say that. He can't say that. But we've got an arguable case. So the chances are we will get permission to go through to the substantive stage and actually get the judicial review. It's ludicrous, and it almost seems like this is a normal part of the judicial system, that a technicality means that you have to redo it again. It's just a waste of taxpayers' money. It's a waste of the money that, you know, this community has raised. But, you know, obviously I've been online, and the outpouring from this has just been absolutely phenomenal. And the community want to do it again. They want to resubmit. They don't want to let it go. So obviously we're at the protest again this morning, and we'll, you know, they'll keep raising the money, and all the time the money's there, we'll keep fighting.
As residents and as families and as, you know, local entrepreneurs and all the rest of it, it's a community. How do you feel that you're being treated by the authorities and by the government?
I think it's disgusting that they can just keep doing this, that they can just make a decision and bypass and cut corners. And the fact that, you know, the judge is saying resubmit, there's arguable stuff here, just goes to show that they are cutting corners. They're not giving due process. They're not giving due regard. So the fact that we can go back, resubmit, and the chances are we will get a judicial review is just demonstrating how they're just cutting corners and they think they can get away with it. I really don't think Crowborough is going to allow that. So we will. I do believe we will resubmit on Wednesday.
What would you say to those who argue that these folk have got to live somewhere?
They have got to go somewhere, of course. But you cannot put 540 men in a place that is the most well-used cadet centre and displace thousands of young people in the process. There are other alternatives, but there is, there's a root cause here, and there is just complete incompetence of this government to get a grip with the root cause. But instead, they want to have this show to the public that we are actually doing something when they're doing absolutely nothing other than, essentially they brought this community together. You cannot argue this community is absolutely amazing. what we need right now is money. Essentially, we need people to give us money so that we can see this through, because this isn't just about Crowborough. This is about the entire country. Shabana Mahmood has been on air saying Crowborough is just the first. We're going to bring forward site after site. They've got their eyes on 2,000 sites. This affects the whole country, and if the whole country feels that this is wrong, that a decision can be made by the government bypassing all processes, then they need to get on board with this as well and make sure that we can see this through.
Stay with us, Kim. In the studio is political strategist Peter Barnes, and in his very long State of the Union address in the United States, there was an amazing moment when Trump said, if you believe that we should put the needs of American citizens above illegal immigrants into the country, stand up now. The Democrats remain seated, which I hope will be a political death knell for them. If only we had leadership in this country that similarly prioritised communities, British taxpayers and citizens, over those who have broken the law to be here.
If only. I feel for the people of Crowborough, and I think what the work you're doing is absolutely astounding, and please do carry on. What I will say, though, is that the court made the correct decision, purely because we have to remember, if law is weaponized on one side, it cannot be weaponized by the other side. The law has to remain equal and balanced between everybody. We might not like the decision. I do agree with you. It seems a little ridiculous, but we follow the procedure because everybody has to follow something. And that's what's really important here. We cannot have the politicalization of the courts even further, because that will just descend us into chaos. I think we have to get rid of these kind of training camps and maybe put army people back in them. That might be a good idea.
I mean, this is a generation of young people that are cadets that can't use this resource. We're worried, and Kim is so right about this, you know, the needs of the community. Young people, we're focused on their fitness and health because some of them are a little overweight. Mental health issues, they spent the whole of, that global health crisis thing stuck on their smartphones. So they need these resources. And the other issue is that it's supply, isn't it? Because, we can decide where these young men go, but it's deck chairs on the Titanic. Now, until the boats stop, then we're going to keep having this conversation.
Yes, 100%. And the boats won't stop because the Labour Party is not politically capable and willing to do the necessary steps, which is dismantle the legal framework and begin putting people on planes and sending them back to where they came from. They won't do it. So therefore, unfortunately, the people of Crowborough, and you're perfectly right, all these other sites are going to affect the rest of the country. And when that happens, the Labour Party is going to realise something, that, you can't just do this to people. You can't just railroad a community, because the one thing that Brits like to do is band together and actually have a force against the government, because this has got out of control beyond all imaginations now. Shabana Mahmood is even pushing further on this programme behind the scenes in SW1. It's very well known that she wants to expand it even more. So, yeah, please do keep up the fight.
Kim, I've got every finger crossed for you that you will prevail and your community will prevail. Can I ask you how life will change for the people of Crowborough if this decision to accommodate that many young men goes ahead? How will life change on a day-to-day basis?
Well, it's already changing, Mark. So obviously we know that there are we think there's over 100 asylum seekers in there currently, and people are already changing their lives. So children would walk home through the country parks, which are pitch black. Parents aren't allowing it anymore. They're not allowing them to walk home. They're going to collect people from school, their children from school, which is doubling the number of cars on the road. We've also seen, the cars that are coming and going up there. They've said in their screening direction, another 348 cars per day are going to be going in and out of that site. The traffic, people have now got to start leaving work earlier. It impacts on every single person's life. The cadets and the Girl Guides and the Scouts and those doing the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, they're not doing that anymore. Families are having to make a choice to either drop their children to go and parade in Uckfield, which is 8 miles away from here, or take their child to the Girl Guides around the corner. So they're having to choose which kind of activity their children do. The changes across the town are immense, and people are worried because the impact assessments, the risk assessments, the security, the safety, the police commissioner has said that it's another £5.62 million just to police this for the next 12 months. That's £10,000 per asylum seeker to police this. So, and that's not there. That resource has not been given to the police. We engage with the police. I mean, the police are actually everywhere at the moment, which is another change to us, because we never saw a police car here in Crowborough.
Yeah.
We saw a police car. It was like, what the hell's happened? Now it's everywhere.
And Kim, you're not far right. You're not this. You're not that on the political spectrum. You are just a concerned local, and more power to you for preserving the life that you have in Crowborough, which has up until now been a great place to live. We're going to stay on top of this story. Today is not a good day to bury bad news. We will always cover what's happening. And Kim, keep us updated if you can. Good luck this week. Kim Bailey is the chairwoman of Crowborough Shield. An absolute disaster. 2 words for you, really. National scandal. More to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
We genuinely are on resignation watch. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson, who faces a criminal investigation.
Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? We have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from Number 10. And Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is thickening. The noose is tightening.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, Dolan's dispatch is coming at 9 a.m. I'll be dealing with Keir Starmer in no uncertain terms. This is a man who refused the US access to UK air bases in its efforts to remove the leader of Iran, who has now been killed. Front page of the Mail on Sunday, British tourists blitzed and Iran's leader dead as Middle East erupts. We've got a long waiting game now, don't we, Peter Barnes, political strategist? Regime change could come, but unlikely overnight.
Oh, very unlikely overnight. But the one thing I will say is it's interesting how most of the Gulf states are now very firmly against Iran. It has been the greatest unifying moment in that region, I think, of my lifetime, certainly. Yeah. And I think that's a very, very important difference when people start comparing it to Iraq or Afghanistan. You know, the fact that places like the UAE, you know, where Isabel is, the reason that was attacked is it's where El Dafra Air Base is. It's where one of the major staging areas for the operations that we saw launched from. So that's why. So basically Iran seems to be, you host either the Brits or the Americans, we're coming for you. And, you know, that's a very dangerous game for them to play, but they are literally a kind of animal and wounded animal backed into a corner, so therefore the most dangerous they will probably be. The big thing is about who comes next. This is really kind of like the kind of what are they going to do? So they kind of promised this big assault and all the rest of it, and Trump very firmly said, do that and I'm going to rain down all, other word you can't say at this time in the morning on you. And yeah, this is the point, that their technical capability is actually very high. It's why we haven't gone after them before, because Iran is one of those kind of nations where we don't know what they've fully got. So therefore you kind of have to be a little bit more careful, which is why last weekend all of this was supposed to happen. But Trump pulled it last minute. However, what happened? All the money moved. Iran prepared for the attack last weekend. So they knew where everybody was going to be. That was one of the greatest intelligence gathering moments of the Five Eyes program, because it forced Iran to actually prepare for the kind of invasion or whatever, and then Trump said, I'm not doing it. But by at that point, everything had already happened. So it's also one of the reasons that the stock market hasn't gone mental. So the Americans were able to see how everybody was going to react. The idea that this is some kind of hot-headed idea that's just Trump being mad or whatever, nonsense. This has been planned down to the dots and T's of every letter. It is absolutely incredible, the precision of this strike. I look at the Venezuelan one as another example. I do think there will have been significant insider help, because that seems to be Trump's play. If you look at the Venezuelan situation, Qatar actually aided in that, because Qatar was attacked by Iran. That is one of the great moments of why all of this started. It is the connections between everything is not 4D chess, it is statecraft, and it is the fact that everything is geared towards controlling China. Everything is about China to Donald Trump, because they have what we call the Davidson window. This is the moment where the US Army will simply walk into Taiwan. When that happens, the world fundamentally changes, because you can't trust the things in the sky that tell us where, all the missiles are actually going to work, because China could just turn them off. That is why it's so important that we stop China. So this is why Trump's moving at an incredible speed, because it's about...
And that's why we had the drama about Greenland.
Yes. The drama about Greenland was basically so the Armada could cross the Atlantic.
Yeah.
That is why that matters.
Because the melting ice caps is widening that strait.
Yep.
Giving access to Chinese and Russian ships.
Yes, it's also the fact that
submarines.
Geometrically it has the direct access and the fastest access to satellites. So that is, therefore they could actually look down and track everything. You get warning time. The more warning time you have, the more chance you have of stopping it and staying alive. That is why Greenland matters. That is why Chagos matters. The Diego Garcia is a prime base for all of this network.
And in Trump and Netanyahu, we've seen the transformative power of political will.
100%. You've seen actual leadership on the world stage, something I didn't think I'd see in my lifetime.
And it won't make you popular.
I don't think he cares.
No, and history will judge very favourably. Peter, we love having you in the studio. Thank you for your wisdom and your rather trenchant views, which I have to say I share. What do you think? Is the world a safer place since these strikes on Iran? The leader is gone. I'll be dealing with Starmer in Dolan's dispatch. It's not going to be pretty. That's next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This morning, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah al-Khamenei, is dead following targeted airstrikes on Tehran by the United States and Israel. But why didn't Britain help with the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, refusing the United States permission to use British air bases? And what next for this authoritarian regime? Will the Revolutionary Guard concede? Is there hope for a country that's been in the grip of totalitarian religious rule since 1979? And with Iran's efforts to build nuclear weapons thwarted, is the world now a safer place? And will history judge Donald Trump for this bold and decisive action? We're going to bring reaction from military figures, politicians and journalists from across the world and across the political spectrum. But as you're waking up to this news this morning, what do you make of Starmer refusing permission to use UK air bases? Donald Trump wants to unseat this regime. No help from Starmer. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note. And as the saying goes, let's talk. Dolan's Dispatch is coming if you'd like to hear it. Of course, we're delighted to have you on DAB+, in-app and online, listening on the radio. But if you want to watch the show, if you want to see Dolan's Dispatch, just head to YouTube, search Talking Up We Pop. Let's go. It is 5 minutes past 9. As always, at this moment, every Friday, Saturday and Sunday, it's time for Dolan's Dispatch. Sir Keir Starmer's capacity for incompetence, Orwellian doublespeak and resolutely poor judgment are without precedent in the history of this country. Our cervix-free Premier has managed to be on the wrong side of every argument, including the very definition of what a woman is. He's been on the wrong side of the argument in his efforts to reverse Brexit following the biggest democratic mandate in history. On the wrong side of the argument, campaigning for Jeremy Corbyn to be Prime Minister. On the wrong side of the argument, backing more ruinous and, in my view, totally failed COVID lockdowns. On the wrong side of the argument, spearheading a growth strategy which has shrunk the economy and leading the so-called party of working people whose policies are putting them out of work. This is in my view, dishonourable man who quite happily took suits, spectacles and tickets to the Arsenal from a billionaire donor. A man who appointed friend to the paedophiles, Peter Mandelson, as UK ambassador to America. A man making every effort to give away militarily significant sovereign territory in the Chagos Islands, with the British taxpayers footing the bill. Sir Keir Starmer, a man responsible for more U-turns than Lewis Hamilton. And now, with an almost metronomic talent for making the wrong call, old mastermind himself, brain of Britain Starmer, refuses to allow the United States, our number one military, economic and diplomatic ally, to use UK air bases to strike Iran. Iran, by the way, provably the most evil regime on the planet. This is a regime in Iran which murdered a young woman for not covering her hair in public and murdered upwards of 40,000 people, and we'll never know the true number because they shut down the internet, for protesting the regime in the first place. And Starmer doesn't want to do his bit to help America to take them down. Sir Keir Starmer made a judgment call that we should not help our number one ally and its president, the leader of the free world, in taking down a regime whose mantra is death to America. Sir Keir Starmer chose not to help a country in America which famously proved decisive in our victory over Germany in the Second World War. And by yielding to his left-wing MPs with this traitorous move, Starmer chose not to help the world, given that if nuclear weapons were to fall into the hands of this tyrannical, authoritarian, theocratic regime, we would all be done for. So Donald Trump, what about this guy, who the press love to paint a picture of as some kind of monster? Donald Trump, an eccentric, maverick real estate entrepreneur with big hair and tangerine-tinted skin. And he is the best thing to happen to the world in decades. He has struck multiple peace deals across the globe, including most notably an end to the Gaza conflict. And with the taking out of a religious leader, he is effectively disarming a global menace in Iran, which wishes death to the West and which is the biggest financial and logistical backer of world terror. Starmer's lack of support for the US in its brave and so far extraordinarily successful strikes on Iran is an act of severe disloyalty to our American friends. I'm ashamed to be British this morning because of what the Prime Minister has failed to do. Failed to back our number one ally. Starmer is always on the wrong side of the argument. He's the broken clock that isn't even right twice a day. He is a pale imitation of a leader. Meanwhile, under Donald Trump, the future's bright, the future's orange. 0344 499 1000. Your reaction to Dolan's dispatch. It's front page news in the Sunday Times. I can't tell you how angry I am about this. Row as PM fails to let America use British air bases. That's a story. Let's get reaction now from a Middle East correspondent, Yotam Confino, who joins us. Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you, Mark.
How will this news be received in Israel that the United Kingdom doesn't support America and Israel's actions in Iran?
I don't think anyone in Israel is really surprised about that. We've seen, at least here in Israel, how the Starmer government has approached not just the war in Gaza, but also how he's handled the tens of thousands of terror supporters roaming the streets of London on a weekly basis. So there's no lost love here in Israel for Keir Starmer, and I really don't think that they even think about him in this equation when it comes to handling big issues in the Middle East, such as confronting Iran. I really don't think that Israel even considers the United Kingdom as a potential ally that could help attack Iran. I think that ship has sailed a long time ago.
Mr. Confino, what is the mood in Israel at the moment following these strikes on Iran? Of course, thanks to the efforts of the US and Israeli military. What is the mood like? How are people feeling this morning?
Well, let's start with how they feel physically. I can tell you from at least my point of view, we're exhausted. We're only 24 hours into this war, but we've spent probably half of that time in bomb shelters. I myself slept in a bomb shelter last night. Many Israelis did the same, and up against 3 million Israelis don't have a bomb shelter. So some slept inside light rail stations and underground fortified large public spaces. But in terms of what Israel and the United States are accomplishing, this is just another major achievement in in a little over than 2 years.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep track of the many military accomplishments that Israel and the United States, for that matter, have achieved in the past more than 2 years, from the killing of the entire leadership of Hezbollah, the leadership of Hamas, and now whacking the regime. But obviously, it also comes with a cost. You know, all of these wars have a financial cost, and they also cost lives. A 40-year-old woman was killed last night in a ballistic missile attack in Tel Aviv. But this is just a situation that Israel has been facing for decades, and now they're finally trying to do something about it.
And it's important, isn't it, for my viewers and listeners to understand, Yotam, that Israel's war is our war as well, because Iran wishes to see the destruction of Israel, but it also declares that it wishes death to the West.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't really understand what that means, because how could they? If they don't live here and if they're not confronted with these kinds of people in their everyday life, the chant death to the West or death to the US, it might seem a little bit arbitrary. But here we understand exactly what that means. And that is why the United States is going with Israel to take out the root of most of these evil causes in the region. I think most people understand what big a threat that Iran has posed, not just to Israel, but to the West in general for decades, including the slaughter of tens of thousands of their own people. I just spoke to one of my sources who was briefed on the operation, and the source said that Israel and the United States hit more than 1,000 targets in 24 hours. And the fact that they went after Khamenei on Saturday morning was because he was gathered, he wasn't in a bunker, first of all. He was unexpectedly gathered with other senior Iranian officials, and they saw a golden opportunity. The attack was not actually planned to begin on Saturday morning, but because they knew that he was going to be meeting with all these senior officials, they decided to go ahead with this attack, which is quite extraordinary. And this means that a lot of the very, very senior Iranian officials, from the defense minister, the leader of the IRGC, to the leader of the army, and of course the supreme leader, they've all been killed in less than 24 hours. So in that sense, Israel and the United States are off to a very, very impressive start, militarily speaking.
Is the fall of this regime now inevitable, Yotam?
It's really hard to say. I think it depends on how far Donald Trump is willing to go. We know that he doesn't like to go into dragged out wars. He likes these clinical, very impressive military achievements, but this is not something you can do in a few days. It is likely something that's going to take at least weeks, because Iran is a huge country. They have built up their infrastructure, militarily speaking, and civilian infrastructure for decades. So if you want to dismantle the regime, you need to continue to attack on a daily basis, probably for weeks, before the regime really crumbles and before Iranians can take to the streets and finish the job, so to say.
Yotam, a privilege to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us live from Israel. We wish you and your loved ones well, and go safe, as it's a very, very fast-moving situation. And as Yotam Confino has said, everyone in Israel lives with the daily threats following the actions of this Iranian regime. And for many woke lefties here in this country, the threat of radical Islamism is very, very abstract. Well, I'm afraid that you're under illusions, and I've got to say that Israel's war is our war too. Thank you so much for that. You're listening to Talk Breakfast, 9:15. More to come. One of the finest journalists in the country is next.
We genuinely are on resignation watch. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson, who faces a criminal investigation.
Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? We have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from Number 10. Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is thickening. The noose is tightening.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Is Israel's war our war? Well, Stephen in London says, good morning, Mark. What people fail to understand is that when Islam is finished with Jewish people, you are next. Well put. I'll get to more of your thoughts on the big story of the day in just a moment. Front page of The Sun on Sunday, war on Iran. Tehran blitzed by Trump, Khomeini's palace hit. And the main headline, Ayatollah dead. So is regime change next? Let's speak to one of the most experienced and respected journalists in the country, the former political editor of The Sun newspaper, Trevor Kavanagh. Good morning, Trevor.
Good morning to you.
Trevor, are we waking up to a safer world this morning?
I think we will have to wait and see about that. I mean, we've seen how long it took in Gaza and in Ukraine for any sort of resolution to conflict. And we've only just started in Iran, which is a totally different kettle of fish. It's a huge country with very difficult terrain to fight in. And although we know that the regime's head has been decapitated in the form of Ali Khamenei, I think that there is still a long way to go. I mean, it's a precision strike. It's been directed and mobilized by Israel, which has inside information with Mossad agents planted throughout the regime. So we will see a lot more of these named officials and leaders assassinated, I think, over the coming days and weeks. But the Iranian Republican Army is a force in its own right, and that has to be defeated too.
Are you surprised by the clear-sighted leadership we're seeing from Donald Trump, who can be an unpredictable figure at the best of times?
Well, as I say, I think the clear-sightedness needs to be demonstrated by the events that now follow. I mean, it is certainly an extremely bold move, and it's been taken at a time when Iran and its leadership has been perceived to be at its weakest for the whole of its 47 years in power in Iran. So that in itself is probably a strategically decisive action. But wars don't simply start and end overnight at the behest of those who start them or those who join in them. And I think that we need to wait a few days, weeks, and indeed months or years before we see whether this has been a triumph or not, because we do not know of any successor. All the potential challenges to the mullahs have been eliminated. I mean, tens of thousands of ordinary citizens, let alone their putative leaders, have been killed in the last few months alone. More indeed overall over the years than anywhere else in the world where so many other strikes have caused protests. I mean, where, for instance, is the Green Party today? Why isn't it mobilizing its forces to rally behind the ordinary citizens of Iran? You hear silence from them on this, but this is very important news, and it will have a big effect, Mark, as you know, on the economy, because I suspect that all sorts of revenge moves will be taken, closing the Straits of Hormuz and cutting off oil supplies.
Indeed, which would, of course, spark potentially global inflation and an economic downturn, which is the last thing we need, Trevor. Well, you mentioned the Green Party. Not only are they deafening in their silence about the fate of the Iranian people, their deputy leader was in central London at a pro-Iranian protest.
This is completely inexplicable, unbelievable, and unacceptable.
This is Trevor, this is the caring left.
Yes, the caring left that wants everyone to be happy doing things that most of us think are wrong. But I mean, look, the sign of the times, I think, was demonstrated over the weekend when the Green Party's new spokeswoman, Abby Wilkinson, claimed unbelievably that no women had been raped in the Hamas attack on Israel. Now, when that sort of blindness, willful blindness, is taking place in a party at the highest levels of that party, the Green Party, then we are in serious trouble. And it's even worse now that we hear from Andy Burnham that he's prepared to do a deal with the Greens in Manchester and elsewhere if he becomes Labour leader by scrapping the first past the post system, which has given us our traditional way of electing governments over decades, and replacing it with European-style proportional representation, which is, in other words, perpetual coalition with the likes of the Green Party in there, the tail wagging the dog.
Most definitely, and a bloc British Muslim vote potentially dictating government policy indefinitely. These are dark times, aren't they, Trevor? And what about the Prime Minister? He seems to have engineered another political own goal by refusing US forces access to British air bases. This is looking like a bit of a car crash in slow motion. My viewers and listeners are absolutely furious that the UK was not there in America's hour of need.
Yes, and I think this will reverberate for a long time, or as long as Starmer is in his job, which won't be very long, but whoever his successor will be is almost certainly going to be on the left, pro-Muslim, probably Iran, you could put it that way, because that's how it's looking. And, you know, other allies, such as Australia, are providing the surveillance bases and other help for America forces in this battle now in Iran. So why are we holding back? It's because of the pusillanimity of Keir Starmer and the powerlessness of his position as Labour leader and Prime Minister.
But why do the progressive left struggle to call out regimes like Iran in the context of their weekly so-called peace marches when they condemned Israel's efforts at self-defense?
There's a very clear reason for this, Mark, and I'm sure you know what it is, because the enemy is America. That's the common enemy of the left. If America is under attack, then they will join with whoever is attacking America. And as far as the Iranian mullahs are concerned, America is the great devil, and they have waged war in terrorism form across the world against American targets, and we are pro-American, or were until Keir Starmer became Prime Minister.
Do you, Trevor, in an unqualified way, welcome these strikes on Iran, or does this still potentially have the makings of Iraq 2.0?
Well, the precedents aren't too good, are they? That's the problem. I mean, look, if this is a clinical strike which works out well and we end up with regime change and a moderate or a less harsh or horrific leadership in Iran, then yes, I think it will have been a brilliant stroke by the American president, and will mark his presidency. Indeed, it will be his legacy. But we have a huge number of unknowns to clear up before we get to the point of celebration.
Trevor, what might the legacy of the Green Party's victory in the Gorton and Denton by-election be?
I fear it's going to be long-term and enduring and incredibly dangerous to Britain's democracy, its way of life, the monarchy, our traditions, our culture. I think that we have now given a toehold, or more than a toehold, to the militant Muslim community. And I'm not condemning Muslims overall, only those who want to cause us trouble. And there are far too many of those in positions now of increasing power with a foothold in Westminster. Now, effectively, the Green Party is now the party of Islam. And that is very alarming, because Islam basically represents the Islam in Arabic means submission. And it will be an attempt by those who lead with militant intentions. It will be the beginning of a move to submit to the views of Allah, which mean that the whole world belongs to Allah. I mean, this is not alarmist talk. It is the actual declared ambition of the Islamic faith, and it's been expressed in mosques across Britain for the last 20 years.
And what might you say to others who would argue that that sentiment is Islamophobic and that the vast majority of British Muslims are very moderate and participate in British society in a very fair and even-handed way?
Well, I think that George Orwell absolutely captured it in 1984 when he said that the first target of the left or the extremists is to capture the language. Once you've banned free speech, which is what Islamophobic laws would do, then you've caught the opposition. People cannot say what is true, what is fair, and what is right, because it happens to clash with the views of a handful of extremists who, in my view at any rate, represent not a religious faith, but a cult, a murderous cult.
Trevor, the Prime Minister likely gone by late summer, would you say?
it's impossible to see how he can survive. The only thing actually holding him in position at the moment is the fear among those surviving moderates within the party that his successor will be even worse. And Angela Rayner, who's favourite for the job with Ed Miliband coming in probably as her chancellor, would be a terrifying prospect because their views about almost everything clashes with the broad common sense of the British people.
And finally, where does Gorton and Denton leave Reform UK, Trevor?
That's a very interesting question, actually, because I think that Reform UK didn't do as well as they'd hoped and intended to do. Neither did Labour, of course, but the fact is that I thought, at any rate, I haven't been to the constituency, but it seemed to me, watching it from afar, that they waged a slightly lackluster campaign. And I do worry that they're going to be able to put together the sort of united front with policies and other issues resolved in time for the general election. And I know that Nigel Farage is fully aware of this and is battling as hard as he can to try to make the reform into a government in waiting. They've got a long way to go.
Trevor, always a deep privilege to have you on the programme. My thanks to Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun newspaper. Sir Keir Starmer refuses US access to British air bases, our #1 economic and military ally. Your reaction next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You're listening to Talk Breakfast 9:31. Thank you so much for your company. Thank you for all the texts. A big response to Dolan's dispatch. Where was Keir Starmer when America needed his help? This from Mark in Southampton. Good morning, Mark. Excellent dispatch. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Mega Vegan says, thank you for telling the truth about President Trump, Mark. He's the best thing to happen to world politics ever. It's sinister how the Western media try to add a negative slant to everything he does. And what about this from Leslie? Good morning, Mark. Iran needs a new leader, and at the same time, Britain needs a new government to give Britain back our credibility on the world stage. Everything that you said was 100% correct in your dispatch. I'll get to more of your feedback shortly. It's been such a busy show. I wish I could have had more time to read out all of your messages because they're incredibly compelling. And so many of you are really angry about the Prime Minister's refusal to help America in its hour of need. Well, let's get further reaction now in the company of the former Deputy Leader of the Green Party, Shara Ali. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mark.
Good to have you in the studio. Let's take a listen now to the Deputy Leader of the Greens, Mutin Ali, at a pro-Iran protest in central London yesterday. Deeply chilling that this is a deputy leader of a party that wishes to be a mainstream political force in the country?
Well, I think that appearing on that march, supporting a march in those circumstances, while I can understand the anti-war sentiment of the left and increasingly the hard left, what's deeply problematic is knowing what was going on at the time, as Mothin must have, he's basically allying himself with the Islamist forces in Iran. We should be grateful that Trump has actually intervened in a humanitarian fashion. What are we saying about the women and girls who have been massacred over the last few weeks and who have been begging for an intervention of the sort that Trump has made?
And who are now celebrating in the streets of Tehran without anything cover their heads or anything like that because they want to be free?
Well, look, I understand the anti-war sentiment and that we must only...
But isn't that the excuse of the radical left?
There has to be a very high threshold on any kind of military intervention. I think that threshold has been met. The sentiment, the basic political philosophy of the Green Party is not even pacifism. We do believe in self-defence. Now, arguably, you could say, and I think Zach Blensky has been saying, that the United Kingdom's safety is made worse through this intervention. I've heard him this morning. He's wrong about that. There is a short-term instability that will be happening in the Middle East right now, but the longer-term trajectory is such that we need to tackle hardline Islamism of the sort that has been growing for the last 40 years in Iran, which used to be a very civilized, liberal part of the Middle East.
Most definitely. And it wouldn't be controversial for a party partly inspired by an environmental message to not want Iran to have nuclear weapons.
Certainly not.
That would be quite a green outlook, wouldn't it?
Well, look,
and that's the expressed military objective of Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu.
Look, the trouble is with the left at the moment is it's all about sloganeering and virtue signalling and flag waving. You know, literally in Gordon and Denton we had Palestinian flag and all kinds of flags, not the British flag, okay? There is a fundamental misunderstanding about what our allegiance should be to British society and Britons. We should not be playing out our allegiances to completely illiberal Islamist regimes in this country. We should not be expressing any kind of support for them. So the Green Party's position needs to be clarified and articulated clearly. And I can tell you what that should be. We should be grateful that somebody, using muscular foreign policy objectives, of course, somebody in the region has actually taken action on this murderous, barbaric regime. We should be grateful for that. Now, of course, it's always the case that the end doesn't justify the means in every case. But I mean, as von Clausewitz once said, war is a continuation of politics by other means. And we have to understand the real politic here. Yes, we cannot be like ivory tower, armchair, pontificating. What are we saying? The central thrust of the point is, what have we done to articulate and vocalise the concerns of the women and girls who have been massacred in great numbers, similar to those in Gaza in recent weeks? Why are we actually betraying a deep double standard? If we believe in humanitarian good and humanitarian aims, we should be supporting the intervention in Iran right now. We're not doing that.
Particularly given that the United States have had years of sanctions towards Iran and months of negotiations trying to hammer out a deal. This action has not happened overnight. They've been at pains to try to get a deal with the Tehran regime. And in fact, Trump has been criticised for engaging with these autocrats. But Trump's like, well, I'll take a deal. And they can stay in power if they desist in relation to nuclear weapons. So it was in their gift to have a deal they did not want.
Well, the other difficulty here is that in the hard left's playbook, Trump can do no good. He can do no right.
Trump derangement syndrome.
Well, he actually helped achieve some kind of stalemate. It's not, it's vulnerable, of course, in Israel-Palestine. We're aware of that. But he did achieve some good. And so what he's able to do is get his hands dirty. This idea that either that Trump is illiterate, politically, false, that he's dumb, completely false. He's actually using the relationships that he has with Israel, with Putin, of course, to try and create a more stable environment. Do we believe that in reality, Trump doesn't give a damn about these people?
Yeah.
No, he does. He cares as much as the next person. He does have more than a shred of decency in him. He is trying to create some greater stability in the international region, and at the moment he's showing his moral compass.
He's no warmonger, is he? I mean, Trump is a lot of things, and I think he has an intermittent relationship with the truth. He's very bombastic. He talks a lot of nonsense much of the time, but he doesn't seem to be much a fan of war.
Well, look,
you can see that in his actions, can't you? That he's always sought to broker peace deals.
Well, look, at the end of the day, right? He has got a military might. He's used it in Venezuela, of course. He is trying to achieve some end point, some end goal. He's got the American interest chiefly in his heart, in his mind, and of course the survivability of Israel as well. But we cannot look everything through the prism of virtue signalling, flag waving, hard left, armchair pontificating. We should be grateful that somebody is actually standing up for the people of Iran. They have a future now. We've taken completely the wrong side of history on this being seen on the streets of London yesterday. Let's revisit, let's reimagine the future for those people in Iran.
How has the Green Party been captured ideologically in this way to the point where their deputy leader will effectively go on a pro-Iranian march in the last 24 hours?
Well, look, Motin Ali, I believe, is being shielded from the media by the Green Party press office. They know that he wouldn't be able to survive an interrogation or scrutiny of how his Islamist views are actually consistent with Green Party policy and value. And if the Green Party is nothing if not a progressive party in terms of LGBT rights, for example, the conservative value system of Muslims in this country, not even hardline Muslims, is such that they hate gay people. They will not allow same-sex relationship education in faith schools. But what would the Green Party have to say about that? Well, a little known fact is that the Green Party does not support state funding of faith schools. That doesn't suggest to me that we are looking towards greater indoctrination within our schools. We're not doing that. And in terms of the transgender piece, as you know, I mean, I've had my clashes with the party around that, just in terms of you cannot press the claims of trans women, i.e. men, in prisons and hospitals against the respective claims of women and girls' right to safety and dignity. But what do Muslims have to say about that? Well, unfortunately, they are also sex realist, not in a good way. They're misogynistic. We're increasingly faced with people in this country wearing the niqab, a lot of whom have come from other parts of the European Union where the niqab is banned. We need to have a position on these matters. We can't just be saying different things to different people as we had in Gorton. That was actually a fundamentally dishonest way in many parts of the constituency of running the election.
Campaign literature going to parts of the community, predominantly British Muslim, were focused on Gaza and demonising Donald Trump, Benjamin Netanyahu and Modi of India, which, by the way, could be quite divisive in its own way, anti-Hindu, anti-Semitic, arguably, demonising Israel, demonising India, whilst withholding more of their woke policies, which, of course, British Muslims would reject. So they were literally pitching themselves as something they were not.
Well, look, that's a dishonest way of doing politics. And that's not the kind of Green Party that we should be promulgating. It's bad for democracy.
And it's cynical, isn't it?
It's incredibly cynical. Look, all is fair in love and war in these very hotly contested three-way marginal, effectively, by-elections. But we won by a good margin. I think that it would have been better to win on our own terms, on a positive platform to say, I mean, what's happened to the environment and the climate calamity? I believe that the Green Party realises and recognises that that is a hard sell. It's very hard to bring people around to the view that you need to change your lifestyles, you need to have lower your carbon footprint. This is a hard sell. This is not a means by which you can say you can carry on business as usual, like as if there's no tomorrow. We're avoiding those difficult questions, and it's not the populism part of eco-populism is there, but it's a cynical way of appealing to the electorate. Zach Blansky's undertaking.
And you don't have to have an environmentally focused political party that is automatically very left-wing, do you?
No, of course not. I mean, in fact, I would say that that's across the board. Everybody has an interest and stake in what happens to future generations.
Margaret Thatcher was quite interested in environmentalism.
Well, yes. I mean, I've got friends across the political spectrum, many of whom, we've got. Well, there's another Zach. Zach Goldsmith, for example, right? He used to be very warm to the Green Party. And
he's a big fat Tory, isn't he? And yet he supports the environmental message.
And so the party needs to actually reach out across the political spectrum, not just left or, God forbid, hard left. That's not where we need to get our maximum base for actually pursuing the environmental consciousness that is required of everybody, not just a subset.
Has the Green Party been ideologically hijacked?
Well, there is a fight which is going to happen so long as the Green Party remains true to its internal democratic values, which allows debate. And at the moment, we have quite a powerful clique within the Green Party who does not allow debate. If debate was allowed, and bearing in mind we've got 200,000 members now, yes, if debate was allowed, I put it to you, firstly, that the overwhelming majority of those people would probably support the Supreme Court ruling, in terms of sex realism. That's not something that Green Party actually wants to actually recognise. And they would also say, we have a big issue with open door, uncontrolled migration. I believe that even when I was in the party not so long ago, I believe that the majority of people in the party recognise that we need to tackle this. Our own deputy leader, the other deputy leader, Rachel Millard, has made statements around around Crowborough, the use of the military training site there. So, not in my backyard? Well, not in anybody's backyard, I think is the lesson you can learn from that. There's nothing remotely sustainable about allowing that level of migration, completely uncontrolled in your own environment.
Well,
it's very destabilising.
Definitely, I've always backed the sort of the progressive argument for stopping the boats. Because if you don't stop the boats, you have further competition for precious state resources that will deprive the poor that we have here.
Well,
it should be the most left-wing ever thing to stop the boats. And from my leftist friends, they don't get it.
Look, the mechanics of stopping a boat is very hard, right? The best way of stopping the boat is to stop it from leaving the shores of France in the first place.
Turning them around
but once
is
they're
very difficult.
here, to treat, and they are illegal on any definition. Under the law, they're illegal. They've come here through illegal means. To actually allow those individuals everything that they want, every basic resource, that's extremely generous, but it's over generous. It's absurd because you've got people living next door in the same villages who are struggling with a roof over their heads and, just to pay the bills. So that's an absurdity, which is there's nothing egalitarian about it. It's fundamentally unequal.
What do you make of the leader, this Zach Polanski? Do you think that he believes the things he's saying, or is he a charlatan? Is it a game for him?
Look, after a point, when you recite the script enough, you will believe what it is you're saying. He's smart. He's an incredibly effective communicator. We must give him that. He's very, very good. When he is probed a bit further, I think some of those positions do unravel. And, he will need to be asked, what does he have to say about the incompatibility of socially conservative Muslims with LGBT rights? He needs to be pressed on that, because in other interviews, he's been very clear that there are red lines for him. So why isn't it a red line that Muslims in faith schools are they attack gays, in other parts of the world, like Iran, they would persecute and kill them. Why is that something that he would want to let into our party? That needs to be tackled.
And he suggests that the idea that the British Muslims or some British Muslims would be misogynistic or transphobic or anti-gay is racist. What would you say to that? Is that a fair defence on the part of Zach Polanski?
No, there's nothing racist about it. And we've had a court case even last year which resulted in the finding that criticism of Islam is a protected belief, Islamo-critical belief, a bit like gender-critical belief. That is a welcome finding.
Because it's a religion, and if we can't criticise religions, we're all doomed, aren't we?
Look, it's a hard question, right? Does God exist? What religion should I follow? But if you're being indoctrinated from a young age and you're not even being given the opportunity to decide whether or not you want to be able to have free-flowing hair in the street, that's oppression. That's oppression of women. And it's very convenient, isn't it, that when you look at Muslims getting involved in politics. And Zara Sultana's made the same point about a kind of a men's club. You don't see any women in the room. So, you know, again, it's an inegalitarian religious ideology which is now infiltrating the Green Party.
Deeply concerning. Keith is in London, and Keith, what do you make of Sir Keir Starmer refusing US access to British military bases in order to strike Iran?
I think Keir Starmer's the worst leader we've had in, well, certainly in my lifetime. It's an absolute disgrace. In the one hand, he's saying in the speech that Iran tried to target our country 30 times but have been foiled. 30 times they've tried to attack our soil. If someone tried to attack me once, I would defend myself. 30 times, he should have been out there. Our forces should be out there joining in with Israel and America. Period. It's a disgrace. This is for the future of the free world. This is for the future of people like you and me who believe in liberty, freedom of expression. Unfortunately, you've already expressed yourself earlier, Mark, just before me, about the problems that are going to face us in the coming years with, I'm afraid, the Islamization of the West. We're seeing it in New York with Mamdani, who has criticised the actions of his government. We've seen it here with the so-called deputy leader of the Greens. Look, we are in trouble here. I believe sectarian violence will become a mainstream situation in this country in years to come. But Keir Starmer is weak. And the truth is, if someone tries to hit our soil 30 times, we should be taking action. And the fact that he's not, in order to probably appease the Muslim vote, because he could see what happened at the by-election the other day, it shows we are in deep trouble in this country.
Keith, what an absolutely brilliant call. I wish we had longer. Call me again soon, and good luck to Arsenal for the season. You might just do it. Keith, thank you for that. Briefly, I've only got a few seconds. You're nodding your head to what Keith said.
Well, look, I think that is a fair analysis. Keir Starmer, I mean, you know, he's lost some people that were close to him in Director of Communications. He is now trying to save his premiership, right? He's not going to be there at the end of the year, I would imagine. People around him are just waiting until probably what will be a devastating local elections. The Greens are buoyant, of course. That was a phenomenal by-election victory, but it's also a wake-up call, because we've seen the tactics that are being used, some of which have been adopted by Labour and the Lib Dems, to try and win an election at all costs. The Green Party will be maintaining that kind of momentum in a general election. But is that the kind of country we want to see, where we've got communities and where Sir Keir has said the right thing, he's just backtracked on it.
Yes,
he's talked about parallel communities and an island of strangers. He was right about that.
Yeah, because someone else wrote the words, Morgan McSweeney. Yes or no, is this current Green Party dangerous?
Well, unfortunately, yes.
Wow.
But it's not unsavable. And the members internally need to take stock of the kind of motions that are coming to conference around his Zionism, racism. I mean, these are very dangerous policies to try and articulate. And if that goes through, that's going to be extremely dangerous.
Shara, what a privilege to have you in the studio. Come and see us again soon.
Cheers.
Loved your company. Shara Ali is the former deputy leader of the Green Party. More to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
We genuinely are on Resignation Watch. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson, who faces a criminal investigation.
Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? We have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from Number 10. Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is thickening, the noose is tightening.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Front page of the Mail on Sunday. British tourists blitzed and Iran's leader dead as Middle East erupts. How will history judge the events of the last 24 hours? Who better to ask than one of the country's leading historians and one of the most published historians in the world, Martin Whittock. Good morning, Martin.
Good morning.
What a time to be alive. We make no apologies for speaking to you for the second day in a row. How are you processing all of this, Martin?
Well, it really is quite extraordinary. I had contact from a friend overnight that said his hotel had been hit by missile shrapnel overnight. A friend of mine this morning from Cyprus said the entire Israeli civilian air fleet has been moved to Cyprus. A friend of mine caught in a Gulf airport because he can't move, rightly so, of course, because they're grounding all air movement in the Gulf and area. This really is quite extraordinary. If the Americans succeed in achieving regime change, then this will be an absolute game changer. It'll be the end of the regime that has ruled Iran brutally and murderously since 1979. But it's much, much easier to bring down a regime than it is to actually replace it. And that's the challenge, of course, because the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps are deeply entrenched. There's no unified Iranian opposition, and the Americans will be very loath to, and rightly so, put boots on the ground. So the Iranian regime is under pressure now that is unprecedented. But for it to actually result in a regime change, that's another step again, and you will not achieve that by airstrikes alone. But clearly they are targeting the government. The Supreme Leader has been killed. We're hearing reports that the leader of the Revolutionary Guard Corps has been killed as well. But the Iranian regime have people in depth. They've been ready for this, or have people step up. And although they have huge numbers of people oppose them, and they're out in the streets now, there are other people who support them as well. And the danger is this could turn into another Libya. Do you remember when Gaddafi fell?
Yeah.
But Libya turned into absolute chaos. And that's the real concern here, that a bad regime will come down. Well, that's not a concern. A bad regime will come down. But the concern is that the nation may disintegrate in the way that Libya disintegrated after the fall of Gaddafi. If you've not got an end game, and we've seen in Venezuela, for example, that Trump just does not seem to have end games. So precipitous action without an end game is alarming. That doesn't mean to say it will be disastrous, but it does mean to say we are right to be very concerned. What is the end game? How will regime change happen? And there should not be American troops on the ground. Absolutely no way. But how will it happen?
Is anything better than the regime surviving?
Oh, God, the regime is a murderous regime. It must change. It must be brought down. It must change. Think of the thousands of people who were killed between Christmas and just a few weeks later this year. It is a terrible, terrible regime that has exported violence around the world via Hamas, via Hezbollah, via the Houthis. It must change. But what we don't want for the Iranian people, the Iranian civilian population, of course, is the kind of catastrophe that landed on Iraq, for example. I mentioned Libya. but we don't want to see that kind of unraveling either. So we are obviously hoping for a real change here for the good of the Iranian people and the region, because most of the region's players do not want Iran to continue as it is, even if they've come to terms with it over the years. The question is how to stop it descending into chaos. Military strikes will not achieve that on their own, and that's the challenge.
And what about Trump? How will history judge him at this stage? I mean, he is the embodiment of political will, isn't he? Even if there is a question mark about the follow-through.
Clearly, at the moment, the precipitous nature of Trump is really coming to the fore. And people will be thinking, if he achieves this, this will be an extraordinary achievement. But if it turns to an Iraq, and if it turns to a Libya, then people will say, this is precipitous action without a plan for what comes next. And that's the challenge. What comes next? Can he achieve it? In which case, it will be an extraordinary achievement. But can it be achieved?
Martin, two things. First of all, your blazers get better. And
Thank you.
Secondly, I wish we had longer, because the most fascinating conversation